Call to order the open session for April 12th, 2021. With that, I'll pass it over to the clerk to get the meeting started.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKeough Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we, as beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, we had one supplementary agenda item for this evening. It went out on Friday afternoon. It is with regards to small business tax deferral, and it is now on the agenda under 22A. This evening, we have received two pecuniary interest, and one is from Councillor Wright with regards to report 17A, Together CK Grant 2021 funding recommendations, and also Councillor Hall with regards to 17B, the motion of Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte regarding support for news media.
Judy, I also have a conflict on 17A. I was just emailing you right now.
Okay, so thank you. That's Councillor Pinsino for 17A. Next, Mr. Mayor, we'll move on to the presentations. And we have a presentation by Girish Sankar, the Director of Water Resources, St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, regarding operating criteria of the McKeough Dam.
And can I call on Thomas Kelly to introduce our speaker, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and members of the public. Chatham-Kent is divided into two watersheds that are operated by the conservation authorities. To the south, we have the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, which is headquartered in Chatham and is actually chaired. The chair is our own Councillor Thompson. To the north is the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, located and headquartered in Strathroy, which is also, we're fortunate to have, chaired by Councillor Foss. Both conservation authorities are in place to protect life and property from natural hazards such as flooding and erosion. We see often many communications from the conservation authorities warning us of potential flooding. They're there to help really manage the natural environment, but also to protect the woodlands and the wetlands. With this in mind, one of the key roles of the St. Clair Region Authority is to operate the McKeough floodway in Wallaceburg. And it was a couple of years ago from the previous council that we had a request by administration to reach out to the St. Clair Region Authority and ask them to provide an update on some of the operating criteria for the Darcy McKeough Dam. So tonight we are pleased to have Mr. Girish Sankar, and Girish is the Director of Water Resources for the St. Clair Region Authority. He has been with them for the past 12 years. He has his master's in civil and environmental engineering, and he's been involved in several projects. Without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Girish for a short presentation on the operating criteria for the McKeough Dam. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. To make it easier, my name, you can go by G. Irish as well. It just stays in people's mind that way. Again, the primary responsibility of SCRCA is to manage the flood forecasting and warning program. Today, I'll be talking about three topics. I'll start with an introduction of SCRCA, go over the flood forecasting and warning program, followed by the existing operating criteria at the McKeough Dam. SCRCA is one of the 36 conservation authorities in Ontario. We are a local watershed management agency mandated to ensure the conservation, restoration, and responsible management of Ontario's natural resources. And we accomplish this through our programs that balance the human, environmental, and economic needs. This slide shows the SCRCA watershed that can be divided into 4 sub-watersheds. The Lake Huron Tribs in the orange drains water directly into the Lake Huron. The St. Clair River Tribs drains water directly into the St. Clair River. The Lake St. Clair Tribs, and I hope you can see my slide here. The Lake St. Clair Tribs drains water directly into Lake St. Clair. For the topic of interest today will be our Sydenham River watershed, which is comprised of the north and the east branches of the Sydenham River.
Girish, it's Thomas.
The mission.
It's Thomas. We're actually seeing a couple of your slides, both the current one and the next slide. Is it possible for you to just select to put it in the PowerPoint presentation mode? It would help, I think, view the, yes, and it would help with the viewing for our listeners. Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Just how is this now?
No, that's where it was. You had it there for a second.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's better.
Is better? Okay. The mission statement of SCRCA is to maintain a healthy and sustainable natural environment in the St. Clair region. And we accomplish this with 4 goals. The first is to ensure that our rivers, lakes, and streams are properly safeguarded, managed, and restored, to protect and manage our woodlands, wetlands, and natural habitat. And the third goal is to develop and maintain programs that protect life and property from natural hazards such as flooding and erosion. And lastly, to provide opportunities for the public to learn and respect our natural environment. For the discussion today, I'll be talking about the goal number 3, which is the flood forecasting and warning program. Our staff are monitoring the weather and the watershed conditions nearly every day, 365 days a year. One of our primary responsibilities is to give out flood messaging to warn the communities and the municipalities about potential flooding. And we have a 3-tier approach to our flood messages. We start with a flood safety, which is a basic level of flood messaging to warn the communities of the high water level. And then that gets upgraded to a flood watch when the conditions change and we are dealing with a few road closures. Then we issue a flood watch. And then that gets escalated to a flood warning messaging when we know there is life and property that are at risk. Of course, we also notify the municipalities through our flood messaging. And we accomplish this through emails, there is Facebook, and also multiple media platforms that we use for this purpose. One of the other responsibilities is to maintain and operate the McKeough floodway, the largest floodway, a flood diversion channel in Ontario. On top of that, we do ice monitoring and ice breaking input to the municipalities. We also have an expectation from the municipality that once they receive our flood messaging, they're able to coordinate internally and are able to take the appropriate actions for that particular flood event. We have a 4-prong approach to the flood forecasting program. As you see on the slide, stream gauging. We have a network of about 12 stream gauges that are positioned strategically across the watershed, and we're able to get information on the water levels on an hourly basis that we know what the water condition is at a particular location. We also do an enhanced snow monitoring. Of course, we do this only in the winter months when there is snow. And we have a few locations that we monitor to kind of get an idea of the type of snow we're dealing with, and of course, the thickness of the snow, to get an understanding of the water content in that snow, which will help us in our flood forecasting. Thirdly, we do ice monitoring. We have a few locations in our watershed around Wallaceburg that we go and we drill a hole, and we like to know the thickness of the ice and the type of ice and the condition of the ice. That helps us in predicting if there is a potential for an ice jam in Wallaceburg. So we do that as well. Of course, we are monitoring the weather forecast all the time, and we're looking for the short range, the mid range, and the long range forecast as well. Just wanted to provide a brief introduction of the watershed and the McKeough Dam. The McKeough Dam is located about 12 kilometers north of Wallaceburg in the community of Wilkesport, and I've shown it in that red arrow. I really don't see my arrow, sorry. I don't see my arrow, I lost it. But anyways, the red arrow shows the location of the floodway. It's a 7.2 kilometer long channel that drains water directly from the north branch of the Sydenham River into the St. Clair River. The north branch flow is measured in a gauge called Brigden. You can see it highlighted with an arrow in black. The east branch flows from Strathroy down towards Dresden and into Wallaceburg. And the confluence of the north and the east branch happens in Wallaceburg and is subject to flooding if we are dealing with some increased flows. So here you see the slide on top is actually where the stream gauge is located in Wallaceburg. It is downstream of the confluence of the north and the east branches. And we're able to look at the gauge, and we're able to get information, again, on an hourly basis on a normal day, but we do get upgraded information of water levels on every 5 minute intervals during a flood event. There are measured criteria and observed criteria when it comes to the McKeough Dam operation. And here in this slide, you see the 3 measured criteria identified in the table. Firstly, the flow in the Brigden gauge has to be over 18 cubic meters per second. That's one of the criteria. Followed by a rate of rise at Wallaceburg. It is the rate at which the level is rising in the community of Wallaceburg at that gauge location. If it's 50 millimeter an hour or greater, with a corresponding water level at Wallaceburg, if it's 176, then it is said to meet the measured criteria for the McKeough Dam operation. Another example, if the rate of rise at Wallaceburg is 40 millimeter an hour or greater, with the water level at Wallaceburg being 176.06, then it is said to have reached the measured criteria, so on and so forth. But lastly, when it reaches the 176.3 elevation, regardless of the rate of rise, it is said to have reached the operating criteria, the measured portion of it. There are some observed parameters. The screen that you see on the right is a shot of our webcam. We have a live monitoring camera just mounted on top of that stream gauge that we're able to look into to monitor any ice jam situation or any wave effects. If the wave, especially from the west to southwest, we see a lot of fluctuations in the water level. So we have a live gauge at that location. Some of the observed parameters include water levels, rainfall rate, ice conditions, the Great Lakes levels. As you all know, the last 3 years, we've had significantly high lake levels, meteorological conditions, the forecast, the snow conditions, ice breaking, and ice jamming. So these are more the observed conditions as to what we're looking at in the near future within the day or within the hour that could contribute to the McKeough Dam operation. So again, a combination of the measured and the observed parameters would be reviewed, and if the conditions are met, the staff would bring that recommendation to our general manager. And at that point, the general manager would have a discussion with our chair, and a decision is made on if the gates should be operated. To make it seamless, we as staff, we are often positioned in the office, and our dam foreman would be at the dam at that time when the decision is being made. So it happens instantaneously without any delays in the dam operation. I just wanted to provide you a snapshot of two events in the past. The one on the left shows you a fall event in October 31st, 2019. We had to operate the McKeough floodway. And the one on the right shows the January 13, 2020. A combination of the measured and the observed parameters are provided here. On this slide, on this Excel sheet here, you see the red arrow that kind of indicates where the measured criteria was met. And the elevation of 176 is provided here. And we had seen a rate of rise of over 50 millimeter an hour on October 31st. And then that would have met the criteria because the Brigden gauge was also recording more than 18 cms. In addition to that, as you see below, we were the forecasts were calling for significant wind, west-southwest winds of greater than 70 kilometer an hour, and we were also dealing with high lake levels. So all of that contributed to the McKeough Dam operation in fall 2019. The slide, the inset on the right shows you the January 13, 2020 event. The red arrow shows where the water level was. I can't see my cursor, sorry. So the levels were really high. It was 176.3, and regardless of the rate of rise, there was a decision made to operate the McKeough floodway. And on top of that, we are dealing with high lake levels as well. So all of that put together, we had to operate the McKeough floodway. Just wanted to provide you some of the benchmark that we have when it comes to flooding or overtopping in the community of Wallaceburg. As you see, when it comes to 176.12, the Nelson Road north of McKeough and also the Emily Street at Elizabeth will be underwater when we see elevations of 176.12 at the stream gauge. When the elevation reaches 176.2 or greater, we see flooding happening at the Otter Line and also at the Nelson Street between Wall and Trafalgar, as identified in my red lines here. So that would be flooding when the elevation of the gauge reaches that elevation. This slide shows on the x-axis you have the months, so January, February, March, so on and so forth. And on the y-axis you have the water levels. It shows 4.5, but what it actually means is 174.5. And here you have 175 and then 176. If you look at the levels from 2013, these are actually graphs from 2013 to 2020. If you look at the levels in 2013, which is shown by the blue here, the light blue, you will get an idea of the freeboard available in the community of Wallaceburg. Typically, 176 refers to the crest of the retaining wall in Wallaceburg. And the elevations around in 2013 were about 170, 175. So you had that 1 meter of freeboard. But if you keep looking at the subsequent years, as we went closer to the 2018, 2019, 2020, there is very little freeboard available. And if you can focus on the months of June, July, August, September for those graphs where I have an arrow that is showing 176.08, that is already above the crest in Wallaceburg, and you can expect that minor flooding is already happening in those months in Wallaceburg. And again, wind-driven events are going to create backflows. We've seen strong winds, southwest winds recently, sort of driving that flooding event in Wallaceburg. That is all I had in terms of operating criteria and taking you through the water levels and some of the issues that we're dealing with, more due to the high lake levels. We are currently working on a review to the operating criteria. The study is supposed to be complete by the end of 2021, and I'm able to bring it to your attention at that time. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, I can take it now, or if you can contact me later, and that's my cell phone number as well. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. Girish, you kind of answered one of my big questions right at the very end. So there is actually a study that is taking place right now. And can I ask who's doing the study or how it's being done?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is an internal study, and as I alluded to, we have a wealth of information over the last 40 years and more information in the last 3 years because of the extreme high lake levels and the wind conditions we're dealing with. This is an internal study that our office is undertaking and my team is undertaking internally.
Okay, thank you, Girish. So is it possible on the conclusion of this that there may be some recommended changes to the criteria? Because I know even when we meet that criteria, we still do have a lot of, like I said, the low-lying flooding that goes on, a lot of flooded basements, flooded streets, different thing like that. And we've noticed an increased problem, and believe me, the last thing Chatham-Kent needs is another community with high water and flooding on our taxpayers. So will there be a possibility of that criteria changing at the end of this study? Or is there a whole other process that has to take place after that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The study is going to provide you with some recommendation on what we are trying to achieve here. What is the elevation that needs to be protected? It can have the information that would provide you some information in terms of changes to the operating criteria. It is going to look at the different facets that are associated with a review, a criteria change. There are things that we're looking at in terms of the condition of the dam as well. When the dam was built, it was designed to be operated once every 6 to 10 years. It was never intended to be operated frequently. It was not intended to be operated intermittently. So we're looking at the different aspects of the McKeough Dam and the criteria. And what we're trying to achieve here is a sustainable operation. We do not want to tap the dam in a way that we're dealing with any potential damages to the structure as well. So we are trying to optimize, if that's the word, and those recommendations are going to be part of this study.
Okay, well that doesn't sound very positive, but and I know like the original contracts, that the expropriation contracts that went out to the farmers and such were dated back in 1984, and your operations manual was developed in 87, updated in 92. I'm assuming that there hasn't been obviously any updates since 92, though you should have a lot of information there to be able to gauge on that. Will there be the ability for community input at all at the point when you come to your conclusion? I was actually going to bring a motion back asking for further follow-up on Councillor Wesley's motion from 2018 when he made a motion to have our municipality work with St. Clair Conservation Authority and bring us back a fulsome report on the conditions and a review of the criteria has taken place. So, and this is really the first we've heard of it since 2018, and we're almost heading to the end of the term again. So I don't want to let it slip away. I'm going to ask that we have this come back, and I guess back to my original question, because I'm sorry I'm rambling. Will there be opportunity for community input, or will you seek input from the municipality and the other municipalities surrounding the area that affects the dam?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe so. At this point, we are going to seek input from the municipalities and the township. If the municipality wishes to have us consult the communities, then we would be able to do that. But at this point, we are going to bring forward our recommendation to the municipality by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. There was a mention of expropriation certificate as well. We are in the process of renewal, and the process had started a year and a half before. Otto's office, Ottavio Colosimo, that's the lawyer's office that's working on that. Interestingly, he had played a crucial role when we had expropriated land to begin with. And again, this is 40 years ago, and he's still out here doing that stuff. So thankfully, he took that task on, and we are expecting the expropriation renewals to come by the summer 2021 this year.
So, okay, so if you get the renewals that come through, and does that not cause a conflict if there is any criteria changes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Those are the things that we would like to explore with the lawyer's office. At this point, if you look at the operating criteria, as long as Wallaceburg is dealing with major flooding, we are able to operate the McKeough floodway. The easements particularly are general to deal with flooding. They're not very tied to the specific operating criteria. It is my understanding that it should not have any challenges, but we will run it by the lawyer's office to ensure that there is no legal implications.
Okay, because I would hope that there would be something in there in case that criteria was changed. I know myself and the community of Wallaceburg, and I'm certainly Councillor Hall, who sits on your board. We would like to see or have some assurances where the dam is concerned. We get overloaded with calls and questions from our community here in Wallaceburg when we have areas that are flooded and we're not unable to clear that. And like I said, our council has certainly experienced the effects of high water when it comes to Lake Erie and the damage that it's caused to properties and such in the other end of our municipality. So we don't want to see any of that going there. One other question I want to ask, and let's see, I put this. Can you give me your opinion, or can you add any thoughts about bringing ice-breaking vessels into the Saugeen Basin? Is that part of your toolbox? I know at the Flood Action Committee in January, we certainly passed a motion to pay to keep deposits on file and such, and for the need to be able to bring ice-breaking vehicles into the community. So I'm just wondering if you could explain to us a little bit if that is a part of your tool belt, is what you use when you're looking at dealing with especially flooding in the winter when the ice begins to rise. And we know the damage in at least in our downtown core of Wallaceburg. We certainly know the damage that ice can take when it lets go.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our office does the yearly Flood Action Committee meeting, and in order to prepare for that meeting, we do communicate with the local ice-breaking companies that are available, and we do make a list of priority icebreakers that are ready and that may be able to help us during that situation. So we do have a page of a table of the list of companies that would do ice-breaking services, and we are responsible for providing that input to the municipality. And not only that, through my presentation, I did discuss the ice monitoring program that we have. And through that program, if we were able to forecast any potential ice jamming situation, then we're able to coordinate with the municipality and help bring these tugs to help us deal with the ice breaking.
Thank you, Girish. And I won't keep you any longer. I don't know if anybody else has got their hands up. Like I said, I had originally had a motion set up, but you seem to resolve part of my issue with your very last statement of your report. So thank you very much for that. And I'll put it off for this week, but I do plan to bring a motion maybe even by next week or the week after, addressing our administration to work with you so that we have that report come back to us in January, so that it's not delayed, so we understand kind of where we're at that point of time. So okay, so I'll let it go. I'm sure there might be some other questions. Thank you very much for the detailed report. And I know we get it at our Action Committee meeting in January, but I think it's important for our council to know and for our communities to know how it's set up in the criteria and what you're looking at, and the fact that you are looking at it again right now. Thank you.
Councillor Hall, followed by Councillor Foss.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kenneth, and thank you very much, Girish, for the presentation. I appreciate all the information. Yeah, Councillor McGregor asked a lot of the questions that I was going to that I was wondering about as well. So thank you, Councillor McGregor, for that. As well, I'm really happy to see that that the study in the fulsome review is still taking place on the operating criteria. I'll look forward to that that report later in the year. And I guess my one question is, it kind of stems from the conversation that Councillor McGregor and Girish had, and maybe this is to Don, but just in terms of capturing some of this public feedback while this study is taking place, is it possible for us to get a spot on the Let's Talk Chatham-Kent page created for while this review is underway in order to capture some of that feedback? Is that something that needs direction, Don, or is that something that can just happen?
Councillor, I think we can actually capture all of the documentation in the slideshow has been will be part of our council minutes. So all of that information will be included, but we can certainly do an overview on the front page for the next several weeks, just to make sure that people are aware of it. And we can direct them to where the full presentation can be found.
Okay, that sounds great, Don. Yeah, just so that people can have a landing page or an outlet to provide some of that feedback at their own leisure. So once again, thank you very much for the presentation, Girish, and thanks for the time, Mayor Kenneth.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Girish, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight. I know that this has been an ongoing issue with especially the people from Wallaceburg as to the criteria, and I'm hoping that this information you gave us tonight will give the public a better understanding as to the rationale behind us doing what we do regarding opening or closing the dam, I guess, during a flood incident. I think in the last 2 years, we've only opened it up, 3 times? And I think prior to that, it was only opened 8 times in those 35 years or whatever type thing. So it's definitely an indication that our climate is changing, and we are experiencing greater threats through that, and it's evident with the flooding that we're seeing. So anyway, on behalf of myself and council, thanks for coming out tonight.
With that, we'll move to item 11, deputations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we have 4 deputations that were received. All 4 were received on the motion of Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte with regards to support for news media. The first deputation is from Walter Plugman, Director of Operations, CFCO, CKSY, CKUE, Blackburn Radio, Inc. I would like to thank Chatham-Kent Council for the opportunity to comment on this motion. CFCO, CKSY, and CKUE-FM have been an integral part of the Chatham-Kent for many decades, with CFCO launching in 1927, CKSY in 1986, and CKUE-FM in 1999. I have called Chatham-Kent my home for over 35 years and have seen firsthand the importance of incredible impact that the local media has on the community. Local stations are a valuable public resource, an important source of local news and reflection. Our dedicated staff provide local coverage 7 days a week, including evenings through the week and weekend, in addition to distinctive reflections of daily life, events, and accomplishments of our great community. The events of the last year have had significant impact on our world. Like many businesses, local radio stations have been dramatically impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the pandemic began, many media organizations have experienced a devastating loss of advertising revenue that has put a substantial pressure on the ability to sustain content levels. Blackburn Radio continues to connect with provincial and federal officials concerning sustaining important local news services in our community and appreciate the support of Chatham-Kent Council. I would like to encourage Council to support this motion in support of local news media. Thank you, Walter Plutman.
Our next deputation is from Bruce Cochran, General Manager of the Chatham Voice. Dear Mayor and members of Council, I have been asked to submit a deputation to the municipality in regards to my request I sent to all council members March 12th. I will repeat what I said then. 8 newspapers and 5 radio stations serve Chatham-Kent in various capacities. I ask that you take a similar stance as to what is a growing number of municipalities are doing. Pledge support to local journalism. The creation and distribution of reliable information is crucial for individual and collective well-being and democracy in general. The actions of a global digital platforms over the past decade have eroded foundation of local media. More advertising dollars are being paid to digital giants Facebook and Google, including from all levels of government. These digital giants pay no taxes here, nor do they employ local residents. At the time when business owners and Chatham-Kent officials urge residents to support local, I ask that the municipality does the same as well, support local journalism. I urge the municipality to reconsider how it spends its advertising dollars and also ask Council to encourage the federal government to enact legislation that supports a crucial foundation of a functioning democracy, reliable local journalism. I imagine councillors have seen our recent story on Facebook advertising spending by certain departments in this municipality as well. News Media Canada distributed it to its newspapers across the country, and there are other news outlets conducting similar investigative reports for their respective municipalities. Local news media is fighting an uphill battle when it comes to advertising revenue. On one hand, we have municipal officials saying how vitally important local news is to the citizens. On the other hand, Chatham-Kent staffers are instead pouring advertising dollars into tech giants rather than locally owned tax-paying businesses. Now, I understand that if economic development is attempting to reach out to people in the GTA, that local media does not have the needed reach. But when targeting local citizens, Chatham-Kent's local newspapers and radio stations are the best options in reaching our citizens. Not everyone reads a newspaper, right? Well, studies show about 9 out of 10 adults read newspapers in print or online every week. I provide details in the attached 10 tweetable truths. Our local media outlets are small businesses. We are here to serve the community. The appreciation of our newspaper goes beyond the paper we are printed on. It is a source of local information and pride. Our readers look forward to it each and every week. But we need the support of advertisers, including the various municipal departments, to be able to continue to deliver the volume of high-quality local news that is associated with the Chatham Voice. We are but one voice. There are many. I will leave you with an opinion piece from Jamie Irving, the Vice President of New Brunswick Inc. and the Chair of the News Media Canada. Regards, Bruce Cochran, General Manager of the Chatham Voice.
The next deputation is by Mirko Petricevic, and it reads like this. Dear Chatham-Kent councillors, thank you for considering a motion to acknowledge the vital role robust journalism plays in democracy and to urge elected leaders at the federal level to not delay in building an ecosystem for robust journalism to survive and thrive. I wholeheartedly ask you to support the motion, Agenda Item 17B, as it is, or strengthened through editing or amendment. Many of us understand the vital role reliable, accountable journalism plays in ensuring a healthy democracy, but many people do not understand. Many of us are aware of the troubling loss of news outlets across Canada since the 2008 recession, which has been accelerated by the pandemic, but many people are not aware. That's understandable, unless you're more than a casual observer of media trends. The myriad media options available on the internet can give us the impression that there is a glut of journalism at our fingertips. But even though it's easy to get stories from national and international news outlets, the vast majority of them don't cover important stories taking place in Chatham-Kent. And I suspect the capacity of newsrooms that do serve Chatham-Kent residents has deteriorated, as capacity has deteriorated for news outlets across the country. For nearly 28 years, ending March 2014, I worked in the newsroom of a quality regional daily newspaper. At times during my career, the newsroom employed 2 full-time health reporters, 3 full-time education reporters, and journalists dedicated to a variety of specialty beats that no longer exist because the newsroom now has a fraction of the staff it did only 15 years ago. In short, despite doing tremendous work under difficult circumstances, the newsroom no longer has the capacity to adequately cover many important beats. This loss of capacity to cover important issues has been replicated in communities across the country, including Chatham-Kent. You probably recall that in 2020, the Tilbury Times ceased operating. So again, thank you for considering this motion. Strong vocal support from municipalities across Canada is a crucial step in restoring a healthy ecosystem for robust journalism to serve residents of Chatham-Kent and beyond. Sincerely, Mirko Petrievich.
And the last deputation this evening, Mayor Caniff and councillors. My name is Heather Wright, and I am the owner and publisher of the Herald in Thamesville. I purchased the 135-year-old newspaper in 2016 and concentrate coverage on the issues in Thamesville, Dresden, and Bothwell. I am also a member of the Board of Directors of the Ontario Community Newspaper Association. Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte's motion and a story of Jenna Kuko of the Chatham Voice on social media advertising in Chatham-Kent prompted me to write. First, I commend Council for looking at the problems facing this local industry. Since 2008, 107 OCNA member newspapers have closed. In some cases, a community, which had 2 community newspapers, lost 1. Others, such as Tilbury, lost their only source of local news. When it was shuttered by Post Media last year, Tilbury Times was the oldest newspaper in Chatham-Kent and was well respected across the province. It wasn't the first to close. In the area now covered by the Herald, there once was 4 independent community newspapers for nearly a decade. There wasn't a local newspaper in Dresden and Bothwell. Community members filled the gap by starting social media pages to keep residents informed, but social media is not a replacement for a strong community newspaper. Strong community newspapers not only build community by sharing the events of our lives, it casts a critical eye on issues affecting the communities by providing facts instead of rumors. That, in turn, can rally communities to work together for the common good. Good community newspapers are community builders. The people I know who run community newspapers are passionate about serving their hometowns, but newspapers can't run on passion alone. Like everything in this world, the cost of producing a newspaper has increased. With the proliferation of social media, revenue has plummeted. Many independent newspaper owners are barely making ends meet before the COVID-19 pandemic arrived. While support from subscribers remained relatively stable during the pandemic, local advertising slowed to a trickle. Newspapers lost up to 70% of their revenues instantly. Small businesses lost income and cut advertising, and the multitude of local festivals, which newspapers promote, also shut down. Thankfully, there has been a government support. One of the most helpful programs was already in the works before COVID-19 hit. The Herald was one of hundreds of newspapers to receive local journalism incentive initiative grant to hire a reporter, cutting our cost for labor. That federal grant has also had big benefits in Chatham-Kent. 3 new journalists were hired through LJI, and the news they produce is shared across the country for free. Some of Chatham-Kent's stories are featured in large daily newspapers through this program. Those programs are a good start, but there are things in Chatham-Kent can do to help. The first of which is to acknowledge the importance of a strong local media and newspapers' role in that, as Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte is suggesting. But Chatham-Kent could and should take concrete actions to ensure it is using local media, including newspapers. In the past year, the Herald has noted a sharp decrease in the municipal legal advertising compared to the year before. And as in Jenna's report in the Chatham Voice shows, social media buys continue to go up. I believe Chatham-Kent needs clear advertising policies for its departments. Currently, each department handles its own media buys. It's not clear how they make their decisions. Often, the Herald salesperson will see an advertisement on social media that applies to our coverage area, calls administrators to offer our services, only to be told that there is no advertising budget. It's frustrating to learn from Jenna's investigative reporting that often there was money, it was just being spent on social media. There is no denying Chatham-Kent will use social media for some of its advertising. However, I believe the municipality should be meeting with each of its local media outlet, receiving information about what market it reaches and where, and with what type of product, and then drawing up guidelines for its departments to follow to best reach the community. For example, the beginning of the pandemic, the municipality purchased 2 pages of advertising in a local newspaper to explain COVID-19 guidelines. Until March 2021, there was no local media advertising from the public health. That despite the fact COVID-19 is our most deadly in the seniors, one of newspapers' target markets. Chatham-Kent missed an opportunity to inform its most vulnerable citizens by concentrating only on social media. Since March, Public Health has placed an ad urging seniors to be vaccinated. As a newspaper owner, I am not asking for a handout from the municipality. I'm looking for an equitable opportunity to provide the municipality a service it needs. Local community newspapers not only provide a valuable service, they provide good value for a targeted market. And they are good local businesses. People who own and work in a community newspaper are local consumers and taxpayers and generate economic benefit as well. That's often forgotten. What's also forgotten are the dollars spent on social media have no direct economic benefit in Chatham-Kent, and these giants pay absolutely no federal, provincial, or local taxes. And I have yet to see Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg shop in Thamesville. Finally, I want to mention that the Association of Municipalities of Ontario have in the past been lobbying to the end of the requirement for municipalities to publish legal notices in newspapers as a cost-saving measure. AMO has been busy lobbying for COVID-19 funding to aid municipalities, but I'm sure as grant money dries up, the issue will be resurrected. I would urge you to consider what impact this would have on newspapers in your community. Sincerely, Heather Wright, publisher, The Herald, serving Thamesville, Dresden, and Bothwell.
Item 12, consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this evening, we have 8 reports that have been pulled from the consent agenda. The 8 items are 15B, Municipal Digital Transformation Grant Program Update, which has been pulled by Councillor McKeough. 15D, Ontario's Vision for Social Assistant Transformation, has been pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and Councillor Brock McGregor. Report 16A, Single Source Tender Award, Fibre Reinforced Surface, pulled by Councillor Latimer. Report 16C, the Tender Award for Supply and Place Gravel, has also been pulled by Councillor Latimer. Report 17A, Together CK Grant 2021 Funding Recommendations, has been pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and Councillor Latimer. Report 17B, Motion of Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, Support for News Media, has been pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte. Report 21A, the 2021 Arena Capital Asset Lifecycle Projects, has been pulled by Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and Councillor Sakachi. And the final report, Report 22A, COVID-19 Waiving of Late Payment Charges for Small Businesses, has been pulled by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Sakachi. Therefore, on the consent agenda this evening, we have reports 13A, 14A, B, C, 15A, C, E, Report 16B, Report 18A, 19A, 20A, and B, and finally, reports 21B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I.
Councillor Oche and Councillor Hall, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
So move.
Seconded.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote.
Still waiting for one councillor. Please remember to hit submit. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes.
Item 15, information reports.
15B, Municipal Digital Transformation Grant Program Update.
Oh, Councillor McGrail.
Councillor McGrail?
Sorry
There you
about
go.
that. Hear me now? Perfect. Okay, do we need to put a motion on the floor first, or can I just ask my question?
You can move to accept the report, and then you can ask your question.
Sure, I'll move to accept the report first.
Councillor B. McGregor, can I get you to second that?
Happy to second it.
Okay, Councillor McGrail, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a couple questions for Stuart. Stuart, so in the report, there was 50 applicants that applied. Did all 50 get the grant?
Thank you very much, Mayor Caniff. We actually had 110 people that submitted applications, of which 50 met the criteria, which was took up the $125,000 that Councillor provided.
Perfect. So then that was the 250 or the 125. Excuse me, because at first you would requested 250, but in the end there was 125 available. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. It was actually the COVID Economic Recovery Task Force that had mentioned in a previous report to Council about allocating up to $250,000 during the December 7th meeting. Council approved 125 to go towards this initiative.
Perfect. Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Anyone opposed to accepting the report? Hearing none, motion passes.
15D, Ontario's Vision for Social Assistance Transformation.
Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions for Polly Smith, please. She's available.
I am. Thank you, Mayor Caniff. It's
Okay.
Polly Smith, Director of Employment and Social Services here.
Hi, Polly. It's often been said that considerable attention is regularly paid to our physical infrastructure, including roads and bridges and drainage ditches, and less attention is often paid to our social infrastructure, which is so very important, particularly for our vulnerable populations. And while it's not likely that all members of the general public have had the time to read the 18-page information report that you have prepared, I'd like to ask you to take a few minutes at tonight's meeting to pull some key points from that report and provide an overview on what this new vision, this Ontario vision, is intended to do, what benefit it will be to existing case managers and our municipality as a whole, how and perhaps why Chatham-Kent was selected as a prototype site for centralized intake, what the co-design of the system has involved thus far, what life stabilization programming means, why we are well positioned to adapt to the new model, which includes the motivational interviewing techniques referenced in the report, What efforts will be made to engage local community partners in the co-design? And lastly, what potential risks exist for your department, particularly Employment and Social Services, if funding of employment services is transferred to a different provincial ministry?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, for these questions. What the new social assistance transformation is intended to do, it's really provide the province's new vision for social assistance to modernize and streamline services in Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program, otherwise known as OW and ODSP, to focus on people and respond to their needs and barriers to success so they can move towards employment and independence. And a big part of that is modernization, using the tools that are available now to do things differently, which we've learned seeing how the CERB funds were disseminated very easily through online applications. So in a sense, this is what this government is looking to do. That's one part of the programs ahead. It is still really a roadmap and plans and development. One of the benefits to existing case managers and our municipality is that it will allow the case managers to spend less time on administrative duties and more time helping people with their life stabilization need, referring to programs and supports that are available in the community. It gives them more time to spend with people and assess their needs. And this would be both Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program participants, where right now they are completely separate programs and the municipality only serves individuals on Ontario Works for income support. So looking at why Chatham-Kent was selected as a prototype for centralized intake, that wasn't really spelled out for us, but I would say it's likely because we had a strong history of being able to be prototype and pilot site for new, automation, modernization techniques and so on. The staff and the management team really adapted to the SAMS platform and the My Benefits platform, which is what our clients use to access their social assistance information. And Chatham-Kent was actually, I'm not sure if we still are, but we had the highest uptake in Ontario. So I think that's why we were selected. Being a prototype means you're part of the development. It's not like being a pilot. It's not already designed. So being part of the co-design is really important, and being part of the overall co-design is important to us as well for the whole transformation. And that's actually Dr. Riedike's role is very integral in that, because she is participating on the confidential collaboration table with other municipalities across the province. But I've brought this information and as part of the strategic management table for the Southwest, and we have talked to the project analysts, and we will continue to do that and provide feedback as we go along and as things develop. It is very early days, as I mentioned. The Ontario Municipal Social Services Association, what we call OMSA, is also gathering information with leaders, and they will share this with AMO and continue to be involved at all different levels. We are really in phase 1 of the plan that's on the placemat that was included in the package. Life stabilization programming refers in very broad terms from the ministry's perspective is income support, which would be Ontario Works or ODSP, housing, health, that could be physical, mental, life skills, education, any community supports that someone might need, legal help, help with their dependents, cultural connections. And this is something that we're quite well positioned within the new model to provide, that we have been providing many of these things or endeavoring to do so for some time. And what helps us help our clients is that we have spent a great deal of time and energy and training First, we hire kind, qualified staff who build rapport with their clients, work with them collaboratively to assess their needs and link what resources are available. But also, we work with our community partners to have a good understanding of what's out there to help people, and also to expand those resources when possible in the community. We use methodologies based on research and positive outcomes. And one of these methodologies is the motivational interviewing techniques. And what that is helping people find their own reasons to change. So to take care of their health or to pursue a job or education. And that is done, and it's just done as part of our everyday work. Having homelessness prevention programming within the division enables clients from both ODSP and OW to become or stay stably housed, despite the challenges of extremely low incomes and lack of affordable housing. Our employment program success and data should allow us to vie for some of the employment money to come back to us. We do have a lot of experience in employment and a lot of strength there, but we'll talk a little bit about that in the further questions. Efforts to engage community partners in the co-design. In regards to that, the most important community partners in this equation are the clients. My team and I will advocate to the province to survey clients on their needs and to do focus groups for more understanding of these needs. Otherwise, we'll share updates with our partners at our numerous tables and invite feedback, which will share up the chain. And Chatham-Kent Employment and Social Services will also try to help our clients and partners understand and navigate these changes. It's important to note that these are provincial systems, and we are one of 47 service managers in the province. Beyond that, the potential risks for employment and social services if funding is transferred to a different ministry for the employment programs. First of all, we'll need a name change. But secondly, the funding formula really is unclear. From what we can see, Chatham-Kent Employment and Social Services could lose over $2 million of our funding envelope. And some of those funds are issued directly to our clients to help with things like bus passes, work clothes, lunch supplies, and very basic needs that they just can't afford on $733 a month. If we lose that ability, we lose a means to help them in the moment when they need it. If the new system doesn't work well, our caseload could increase and we could have no capacity to operate an employment program to combat that. If caseloads increase, that means more people are living at the lowest levels of poverty and housing stability is at risk. Even during the pandemic, Chatham-Kent Employment and Social Services has had a gradually declining caseload, with 1% of the caseload exiting monthly and still higher than the provincial average. So we'd like to keep that going. We want to keep helping people as much as we can in the area of employment. But there could be a combined approach where some of or most of the funding and duties are retained as a service delivery partner. It's unclear at this time how this will play out in the Chatham-Kent area. But we have had success using our motivational interviewing work and our strong placement ties with employers in the community. And so that is something that we will promote. I should note that there is no mention in the information that was provided about raising social assistance rates. So that's not yet part of the plan, and it's believed that life stabilization resources will help more people enter the labor market. But we do have concerns for people that aren't able to enter the labor market, and income is a huge life stabilizer. So we'll see how this roadmap plays out, and there's much to be worked out over the next 3 years, and a lot can happen in that time, but we'll be ready.
That's great, Polly. I really wanted you to have an opportunity to showcase some of the work that you and your team have been doing, and to commend you for, surviving a very tough year this past year with all of the work that you've been doing to help some of our community's most vulnerable folks. So thanks very much for putting your notes together and responding to my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Polly, for the report. It's really helpful to have that type of overview of where we're going with this transition. And I think the report does a good job of capturing the need to simplify the experience for clients. And I think that recognition of the importance of decreasing administrative burden so staff can do really what they're there to do, and that's serve clients and perform that work around life stabilization is really important. I remember going to the Bridges Out of Poverty workshop in the past, and it's surprising to learn from those with lived experience, how challenging it can be to move through the system, to move between service providers, and just how much time and effort that takes sometimes. And I think any move that we can make or be part of to allow fewer touch points, to see more support offered in one location, and to use those relationships we have to deliver services to those who need it is a positive step. And I think it's really encouraging to hear that you're advocating to engage with clients in the development of this process as well, because that's at the end of the day is really who's going to be affected. And with that, I wondered if you could comment on how the transformation will be communicated to clients and what we're expecting to change from a client experience.
Thank you, Mayor Cannon. In terms of the client experience, the intent is really for a holistic, modernized service, and it can be quite exciting looking at the plans and the goals of the roadmap, including, a person might have the ability to, they come into hard times, they could apply, any time of the day. Their first check could be verified completely in an automated fashion through verifications with Equifax and CRA. And really, that would increase their ability to receive assistance more quickly, less back and forth with workers, at least to get started. And then the intent would be for more help one-on-one as they meet their worker. There's also the intent at the same time to bring integration of other municipal services like housing and childcare into the mix. So potentially that one life stabilization case manager could assist with a variety of things, as well as the external referrals that they would be providing. So it really could be a great holistic approach. But conversely, it could also mean that they will have to go to one worker for help, essentially, and another worker for funding. But that's really unclear yet, and that has not been defined. So, that's the kinds of things that we will be providing feedback on through the consultation processes. It's really important for us, for our clients not to have to tell their stories over and over again, for them to have well-rounded services. But we're very willing to do that in new ways, and we're open to see what's ahead, because it definitely needs to be simplified. It's a very complex system. There's something like 850 eligibility criteria. I used to joke that it was probably easier to get a mortgage than 1 month's social assistance, and that's just a joke, of course, but we do not want to put people that are stressed through all of those levels of eligibility criteria checking.
Absolutely, thank you, and that's very helpful to hear. And that was all my questions. I don't know if we had a mover and a seconder to receive for information, or if we still required that, but I'd be happy to do it.
All right, Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, would you second that?
Absolutely, thank you.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Item 16, tender awards.
16A, sole source tender award contract T21-102A, fiber reinforced surface treatment.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to move that, please?
So moved. And seconded.
Councillor Latimer, you had a question?
I did have a couple of questions for Mr. Faulkner and a comment. Brendan, I wondered how much longer and under what conditions the fiber reinforced surface treatment is expected to extend the road lifetime versus standard resurfacing treatment, and if other municipalities have any different stats than us on this yet. I also wondered how you chose the roads you did. Did you use the new street scan road rating application? And I'm still looking for an itemized list of anticipated road work for the 2021 season. When would you know when this would be available?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Caniff. So I guess to start off, kind of the main difference between the fiber reinforced surface treatment and the standard is just an application of a modified emulsion, and some fiberglass strands are sort of included as well. So this combination makes the mixture highly resistant to cracking in the road. It helps the road last longer. So it's believed these additives and improvements over the standard surface treatment extend the life of the road by about 2 years. So these numbers are kind of assumed and based on supplier and industry best practices and kind of local municipalities. So we haven't had a chance to confirm them ourselves yet, just because we've been doing it for the last few years. But like anecdotally, while we're reviewing our roads for this year's contract, we have found that these fiber reinforced roads are performing better than the roads that were surface treated using conventional methods in the same year. So we're encouraged by these results and look forward to continuing to review the performance and eventually confirm our visual assessments with empirical data and getting updated PCIs on these roads so we can do a more detailed comparison between the two methods. We also so a lot of local municipalities are starting to do a lot more of this, but they're all kind of in the same position as us where they haven't had a chance to fully see the life cycle benefits at the end of the 10 years plus of the life cycle of the road. And yes, we did use street scan for this road rating data. We used kind of the first year of the street scan data and kind of our year 5, 6 of the old food road data, and found that the lists were fairly consistent. So we're just kind of getting familiar with the new ratings. So our technologist drove all the roads that were recommended by street scan and some of the next ones, and that's how we finalized the list. So the total roads that will be resurfaced in 2021 will be made up of these two surface treatment contracts that are found in this council. That we had the crack sealing go a couple weeks ago, and then next council, the April 26th, we'll be bringing the cold in place and the hot mix asphalt list to council. So those will make up the 2021 road resurfacing projects.
Thanks very much, Brendan. That's all I wanted to know.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes. Moving on to 16C, tender award T21-103, supply and place gravel.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor Wright, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Latimer, you had a question?
Well, I did originally, I kind of was confused with the wording on page 2, but through my emails and emails with Mr. Topeka and my discussion with Ryan Brown today, I think it's just the wording on page 2 under the comments. I wonder why it said the change to granular M will not affect the quality of materials being placed when the recommendations stated we were using granular A, but I think that those two A and M just kind of got mixed up in that paragraph. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Topeka and Mr. Brown have assured me that we are using a granular A throughout the whole municipality. That is correct. Correct, Mr. Topeka? I think he's on.
You're the mayor. Yes, thank you, Councillor. That was a typo in the comment section, 3rd paragraph. The recommendations on the first page are correct.
Yep, already. But somewhere in here, or well, not somewhere in your report, you did say that we're doing less, 40 kilometers less than what originally anticipated. With the increased gas tax funding for infrastructure announced, could we consider including that 40 kilometers if funding arrives in a timely fashion? So if Mr. Topeka can answer that, perhaps Mr. Brown or even Mr. Kelly could.
Thank you, Councillor. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to answer that question, so that will have to be to Mr. Kelly, I believe.
Well,
I'm sorry, Councillor, I was working with our clerk to get the correct tender award up in place for 16C. Could you repeat your question, please?
well, I just wondered if Mr. Topeka noted that they anticipated they weren't going to be doing their 40 kilometers of gravel this year because of the increased costs. So I wondered, with the increased gas tax funding for infrastructure recently announced, what could we consider including that 40 kilometers again if funding arrives in a timely fashion?
Yes, as long as we can add it to the existing contracts, and I believe we do have some flexibility there, that's a possibility. With that increased gas tax, we plan to first review it internally of what those priorities should be, and then we will come back to council with some recommendations on how we spend that money. So that definitely could be one of those recommendations. We had the same opportunity back in 2019, you may recall, and that's how we handled it. We put together a report for council's approval on how we're going to spend that extra gas tax. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to take a minute to express my appreciation to Mr. Topeka, who took time out of his today to write, re-educate me or educate me some more on different types of gravel and why we use the type of gravel, where we use it in our municipality. So thank you very much, Mr. Topeka. I appreciate your time and effort.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll put this motion to vote.
All votes are in. And motion passes.
Item 17, Chief Administrative Office.
17A, Together CK Grant 2021 funding recommendations.
Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and Councillor Latimer, can I get you puts on the floor, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, questions from Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and then Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a series of 4 questions for Amy Wilcox, if she's available, please.
Hi, this is Amy Wilcox, Manager of Corporate Initiatives. I'm available to answer your questions.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to deal with these one at a time, if that's okay. The first question I had was that I noticed that there are only 5 citizen members on the committee, and I'm wondering what efforts have been made to fill the vacancies. I think there are 3 vacancies at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. You are correct, Councillor. There's to be 8 members, so that is 3 vacancies. And what we had done in working with Judy Smith's area municipal government, we had put out asking for people for applications for volunteers. We received that information. The applications were scored, and that information was shared with the review committee chair, which is Mike Lowther. Mike then reviewed that information, and he was reaching out to potential volunteers, and then that was last summer, and then we've had COVID. So I know he's still working on that. And unfortunately, he was unavailable to be here to answer any of your questions.
Okay, so what I'm understanding then is that the recommendations for who the 3 people are going to be to fill the vacancies is up to Mike, or is it up to the committee? Or is he the recommendation to council?
So those application information was shared with Mike as the councillor, as the committee chair. He was reviewing that information and he was connecting with those volunteers so that he could ask questions. And he's still in that process of trying to be able to work with them.
Okay, so I'll have to check with them then. All right, second question. Does someone check to ensure that all of the submissions use the same dollar value for volunteer hours? I know that your application form speaks to using minimum wage or something like that, but I'm wondering about the discrepancies between applications that might use different values for volunteers that could skew the amount of the total project?
Thank you, Councillor. So when a committee or an organization submits a budget, we do review it, but we don't review it to that detail. However, when speaking with them and filling out their applications, I do encourage and recommend that they use minimum wage for volunteer hours for in-kind, unless that volunteer is providing a special skill or service, for example, an electrician or a plumber.
Okay, and do you speak to all of the applicants in the process?
Only if they reach out. We try to share that information through the grant guidelines, but no, unfortunately, we're unable to speak to all the application groups.
Okay, I'm suspecting that there might be some people who would have welcomed some opportunity to chat just to make sure that they were filling out the forms correctly, but I can't comment anything.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Doing an application to reach out to us. Sorry, Councillor. We do encourage anyone that is planning on putting an application to reach out to me, whether it's at the beginning or mid-application for any type of clarification they may need with the application.
Okay, great. Third question. There seems to be some misunderstanding on the part of some of the applicants about how the 25% in-kind works. And I'm wondering if the application form or criteria could be a little more specific, or whether the criteria might need to be amended, because I would really hate to see agencies penalized for contributing too many volunteer hours, or working very hard to secure grants from other sources that will help their project.
Thank you, Councillor. It was very helpful for you to reach out to me and let me know that has caused some misunderstanding. We also, one of the applicants had reached out to myself and had some comments, and we shared that with our chair, Mike Lowther. And in reviewing it, we feel that there is an opportunity for clarification. And as you mentioned, that it does appear like some groups could be currently being penalized. So I believe you're talking about the 25% in-kind limit.
Yes.
And for the right, so the 25 in-kind limit, that is very consistent with other grants. However, in some of the examples we have seen, if I may use a current example, say the Lower Thames Conservation Authority, they have quite a few in-kind services that are being provided to them, and therefore they've exceeded the 25% in-kind. We feel there is an opportunity for clarification in this for the next round, stating that perhaps that 25% in-kind limit, if it's exceeded by 25%, be forgiven as long as the amount of financial actual monetary dollars from the volunteer group matches the amount they're asking. So for example, if they were asking for 10,000 grant from the municipality, but they were also providing 10,000 in actual monetary dollars, that if they were to exceed the 25%, that should be, application should be allowed to proceed.
Yeah,
so we definitely believe there's opportunity for clarification.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And my final question, and probably the toughest one, it's my understanding that the criteria for these grants was approved by Municipal Council, and that the committee honored those criteria in this round of approvals. But any decisions to overturn the recommendations and approve applications that have been declined could jeopardize the process. And I'd really like your take on this particular dilemma.
Thank you, Councillor. As Council will recall, originally the review committee was contained of administration, and back in 2019 we were asked to include volunteers to be representatives on that committee as well. The mandate for that committee is very clear. They're to review the applications of the grant program, evaluate those applications, as you mentioned, based on the grant program evaluation, and make recommendations in the form of report to Council. I believe that in working with the review committee this year, they have met that mandate. They've completed the review process and evaluated each application based on the grant program guidelines. They had met with administration last year and had recommitted that they would follow the grant guidelines and follow the term of references of that committee. So as grant administrator, I would recommend council approve the committee report as is. I do feel that if council was to overturn the recommendations that the committee has put forward, I do think that that could harm the process. And also perhaps, I'll just stop there, if I may, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Amy. I really appreciate your comment.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Finn.
Yes, thank you to the mayor. I wanted to thank Amy for our discussion this morning and providing clarification as to why and how the committee, what they based their decision on. And also, I asked her to forward my comments to the committee regarding my concerns about our current guideline interpretations, and in the hopes that perhaps this would result in the committee and or council reviewing or tweaking the decision matrix for the upcoming 2022 funding approval round. So that and that was where I was coming from, Amy. So you did what I asked, and I send my appreciation to the committee for the work on this. In an adapted format with COVID throwing in a wrench in the whole process. I did have a concern with one of the denials, but I reached out to that particular association, and they've had an opportunity to have their funding request managed by another resource. So that was my main concern. So thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Councillor, for that update.
Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Amy, just a question that got brought to my attention, not just with this grant program, but for the other ones through the city, that if an organization or business is successful in getting government funding from either the provincial or federal government, is there a check into it to see if it has something to do with the grant that they're applying for? As I know the government's been handing stuff to businesses with COVID, but may not apply. It may apply to something different than what they're applying for the city for.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Councillor Finn, I can only speak to the Together CK grant for events and community projects. And just to assure council that if a group puts in an application for a particular project, that is where the funding goes. In order for them to receive their final grant amount, they have to submit a final report. That final report is a write-up of the project, photos, as well as copies of all the invoices they'd like to be reimbursed. However, that being said, there has been a couple projects where beyond the applicant's control, things have changed and they wanted to go with a different project, where they would then connect with me, ask for the opportunity to change the funding for a different type of project, and that would go to the review committee asking for a change, and they have to approve it, and then I notify that group whether that review committee has approved it or not. So unfortunately, I can't speak to anything with provincial or federal government funding, as I don't deal with that in my area.
No, I understand that, but if they got, I know I've been told that there has been organizations that had provincial and federal funding, and that's part of the reason why they were denied through the city. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not aware of that. We go through and provide in the report what groups were not recommended, and it was recommended for very specific things. I'm not sure if you feel comfortable asking a direct question during council, or if it's something you'd like to take offline.
I can ask, is there a question on there if they're getting provincial or federal funding?
I wouldn't necessarily be able to answer that, but if you're concerned that somebody has been denied funding through the municipality because they're already receiving funding from another source, That is not with my grant at all. Nobody was denied recommendation for a funding due to other funding sources. Through the appendices, it'll show that people were not recommended for things such as their in-kind exceeded the 25% limit, that their event was a fundraising event, and another group was, again, and then with regards to community projects, same thing. They were not recommended due to their in-kind exceeding the 25% limit, and another project not being recommended because it was regarding operating expenses, which violated our grant guidelines.
Okay, thank you. I've seen an application, so I wasn't sure if it was stipulated on the application or not. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put this to vote.
Still waiting for one more. The two that had put a conflict in for this one, you can just abstain. All votes are in. Motion passes. Moving on to 17B, motion of Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, re-support for news media.
Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, floor is yours.
Would you like me to read the motion or just let people read it on screen?
Yes, we'd love you to read it, please.
Okay. I, Councillor Karen Kirkwood-Whyte, bring forward the following motion. Whereas a healthy professional news media is essential for the proper functioning of civil society and democracy at the local, regional, federal, and international levels, and whereas residents of 190 Canadian communities lost 250 established news outlets because of closings or mergers between 2008 and 2018, and whereas the federal government allocated nearly $600 million in aid for Canadian media over 5 years in its 2019 budget, including a 25% tax credit for newsroom salaries, a 15% tax credit for digital media subscribers, and charitable tax status for nonprofit news outlets. And whereas Canadians have lost the essential services provided by nearly 500 journalists due to layoffs in the Canadian media since the COVID-19 pandemic began to mid-April of 2020, a time it became clearer to the public how important it is for Canadians to receive factual information, and advertising revenues have plunged, prompting an emergency $30 million advertising buy by the federal government. And whereas the news media in Chatham-Kent have been instrumental during the COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring local citizens have timely and factual local information, and whereas periodic misinformation on social media sites hampers the ability to communicate factually with local citizens, and whereas a stronger local media would demonstrate the value of accurate information and provide a more balanced perspective for discussion of public issues, be it therefore resolved that Chatham-Kent Council acknowledge that a robust news media is essential to the proper functioning of democracy in their jurisdictions, endorse legislation and regulations to support and rejuvenate news outlets across Canada, and urge the federal government to move quickly to pass legislation to ensure an ecosystem for a healthy news media to serve all Canadians, and that other municipal councils within the province and across Canada be encouraged to do the same. And further, that this resolution be forwarded to area municipalities, local MPs and MPPs, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and further that Chatham-Kent Council encourage all residents to support local journalism. If I can get a seconder, I have a couple of comments I'd like to make.
Councillor Crew.
I'll second that.
Okay, Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte.
Thank you, Your Worship. For those who may not know, inkstainedwretches.org is a scrum of Waterloo Region Record newsroom staffers, either currently employed or alumni, who were lamenting the decline of journalism and formed out of frustration to demonstrate that a robust local news media is essential for democracy to thrive. The Inkstigator, as he has been affectionately called, who submitted a written deputation this evening, is Mirko Petricevic, who works as a communications director at a university college in Waterloo. To this date, 15 municipalities in Ontario, 2 in BC, and 1 in Newfoundland have passed a journalism support resolution since June of 2020, and more are being encouraged. I'm actually proposing this motion because at least one of our deputies tonight have already articulated that there are 8 newspapers and 5 radio stations that currently serve Chatham-Kent in various capacities. It's been said that the actions of global digital platforms over the past decade have eroded the foundation of local media. These digital giants pay no taxes in Chatham-Kent, nor do they employ local residents. And our own municipality has been urging residents to support local businesses. On a more personal note, I do enjoy sharing both humorous and worthy posts on some social media channels, but I also listen to local radio stations, and our household still subscribes to and receives a printed copy of our local news. I do want to point out, however, and to confirm, that this motion does not speak specifically to municipal spending on advertising, which has been covered in some recent media articles since this motion was originally presented, and in some of the deputations received this evening. In keeping with some comments from a former colleague and friend, Tom Slager, who writes for the local Candid Badger, approval of this motion does not preclude the need for individual municipal departments to continue to undertake ongoing assessments of the funds that they spend on advertising with local as well as external media outlets to ensure that these service providers offer a superior product either in their reporting activities or in their advertising packages. It is important for municipal council and our constituents to know that tax dollars are being wisely spent and the outcomes that we hope to achieve are in fact being realized. Also, the presentation of this motion is timely because May 3rd, which is 3 weeks from today, is World Press Freedom Day. This year's theme is information as a public good, and acts as a reminder to governments of the need to respect their commitment to press freedom. It is also a day of reflection among media professionals about issues of press freedom and professional ethics, and a day to support media which are targets for the restraint or abolition of press freedom. World Press Freedom Day is also a day of remembrance for those journalists who lost their lives in the pursuit of a story. I believe that the actions outlined in this motion are the right things to do, and I look forward to receiving the support of my fellow councillors. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I will, of course, support this motion. I think that what it does, it's basically acknowledging and it's supporting local media, not just in Chatham-Kent, but across the board. It doesn't have a lot of teeth, of course, because it can't, because people like myself, I do rely on my my phone for my news through Twitter, Facebook, etc. But I do acknowledge that our local news, which to me is very important, and of course is to everybody locally, no matter what your locality is ignored when it comes to these broader platforms. So I just hope that everybody understands this is not a charity. We're not saying, oh, we should just, be giving advertisement dollars to our local media outlets, but we should just bear in mind that we should support them and know that our local news, being in a small community, which we are, is ignored by the big platforms. You're not going to read local Chatham-Kent news on Twitter unless it's tweeted out by an unverified source, which again is not journalistically, and there's no integrity. So by supporting this motion, and really what it says to our municipality and to our residents is that local journalism is important, and we really would be effectively at a loss without it, because we're not going to know about local stories relying on the big Facebook, Twitter platforms. It's not going to be there unless it's things that people put out which are, again, unverified. So I think this is a great motion. It's a great movement by Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte to really encourage not only the municipality but local businesses and local people to support our local journalism, which again, if it was lost, we would really miss it. It's getting thin because of technology, but if it was ever lost, we would be at a loss because we're not going to find our local stories on the big platforms. So again, I applaud Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte for this motion, and I fully support it. Thank you, Mayor Kenneth.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Item 20, Infrastructure and Engineering Services.
21A, 2021 Arena Capital Asset Lifecycle Projects.
Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and Councillor Sakachi, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved.
Seconded, Mayor Caniff.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte and then Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Worship. I did receive an email from a local constituent asking if the painting of the seats in Chatham Memorial Arena would also include the numbering. And if Jeff is there, I would ask him to respond to that. And then I think all of council received a letter today from another constituent that was recommending that perhaps the volunteers that are associated or affiliated with the Chatham Maroons or the Chatham Memorial Arena might be encouraged to help with this little project to free up some staff resources. So if Jeff is there to respond, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The lettering or the numbering of the seating is not included within that life cycle project. However, as noted, we do have the capacity to complete that through operational budget lines. We love to engage the volunteers. I think that's what makes the Maroons a great community asset. We would have to review what level of participation they would like to provide to the staff before we proceed, but we will certainly engage them.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
No problem, Councillor.
Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This question through you is to either Mr. Kelly or Mr. Bray. We're all very aware in the community in regards to the the funding application that was declined and in regards to receiving funds for a new arena. So my question is to Mr. Kelly, has the engineering staff done any kind of quantifying of numbers in regards to, with our structures being so old, if there was a catastrophic fail, having kind of a contingency plan, or what that would look at in regards to life cycle dollars, just because a lot of our, like I said, a lot of our arenas are very, very old, and just curious to see what would happen if we had a catastrophic failure in one of those older buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff and I have gone through it's really part of the asset management plan. We've gone through that in quite detail with all of our arenas. And we have a number of concerns as you just expressed, that over the next 10 years, we estimate in order to keep these facilities running, we'll have to spend in the neighborhood of $19 million. So that's about, on an average, $2 million per arena. And one of the biggest concerns we have is the actual concrete floor, the structure, which will run itself in excess of $1 million. That is a risk on 7 of the 10 arenas. And when that happens, it's quite a task to remove the old floor and put a new floor in. The risk could be that the season could be delayed as a result. Right now, because of the fact that our asset management plan is underfunded, we are trying to, as a means of trying to save money, basically, is that we don't have the money to replace all of those floors or even really plan to replace them. What we're doing is that we're trying to extend the life, and unfortunately, I have to say that advanced planning, we just don't have that luxury. So we will have a situation where one day the concrete floor will fail, and as a result, we'll have to replace the entire structure. So when that happens, we will definitely have our facilities down. And the option to avert that is to proactively start to take the floors one at a time every year. However, we need to have additional funding then for our infrastructure budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. My last question would be on some of the older facilities then, would, because you guys always do such a great, asset management plan in regards to, the life cycles and the age and all the other factors, do you feel that some of these arenas would have a number that would say, that would cause you to bring a report to council that would say this arena is just not, really viable to be repaired? Would your team be preparing numbers like that?
We have all of those. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have all of those numbers now. We know exactly. We've gone component by component at every single one of our arenas. We know the life, we know the current age, the condition, and we can predict when that's going to fail. Of course, it's always a prediction based on average life, but we know that failure is definitely in our future. So the main expense, which is the $1.4 to $1.5 million expense, is the floor. But as you see by this report, everything is very expensive. So at this time, the greatest risk is the floor. That's in 7 out of the 10 arenas. And we would be coming back to council most likely before we would recommend that expense to ensure that council wished to put that level of investment in those arenas before we would move forward with it.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and thank you, Mayor Caniff. That is all my questions and comments.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes.
Item 22, Finance, Budget, Information Technology, and Transformation.
22A, COVID-19 waiving of late payment charges for small businesses.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor Sakachi, each move this, please.
So moved.
Second, Mayor Caniff.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Sakachi as far as questions.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Gord. Gord, what's the estimated number of businesses you think would be taking advantage of this? If I remember correctly, we gathered an actual greater percentage of tax payments during the COVID or the last round of tax retrieval, didn't we?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. It's Matt Torrance, Director of Financial Services. We don't have an exact number on an estimate for the businesses that would uptake this program, so it's hard for us to give a number.
Now, I'm just wondering, I can't remember, but I thought that while we expected the tax payments to some of them to be in arrears over the last year, that didn't really happen. People did pay their taxes on time, correct? The greater majority of them?
That's correct. So last year we did some analysis and that the taxpayers continued to pay their taxes. I think there's been our reason for bringing this forward to council is we're hearing from the business community that they're feeling the squeeze a little bit, and we do receive some calls. The mayor's office receives some calls, so we felt that this is something that we could do in response to the restrictions that were put in place by the province last week.
Well, I actually had a couple of residents call me asking if we could not offer this to our residences as well upon request. If they found themselves in a place where they couldn't meet that deadline, could they contact us and have be considered to waive the payment, the late fee payment?
Yes, thanks for the question, Councillor. So it is something we considered in terms of an application-based program. Operationally, it would be really difficult for the staff to handle the volume if we opened it up to residential. In this case, we're targeting small businesses, and we feel like we can handle the application-based system. Alternatively, the program could be opened up to the point where we waive tax or we waive penalties for everybody, but in that case, not everyone is in the same situation. Some businesses are doing very well. Some, even homeowners, continue to have their normal employment, and their savings have actually gone up because they have nowhere to spend their money. So
sure,
not everyone is impacted equally by the restrictions. So our opinion is that we would like it to be application based so that those most in need receive the assistance. But in doing so, it's hard to administer if we open it up to the residential class as well.
Understood. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Mr. Torrance, you actually kind of stated some of my points where I kind of wanted to have a couple of follow-up questions. So you've indicated in regards to, the application process and ensuring that it's, we're able to do it from a staffing perspective. So here's my concern is that this particular way that the recommendation is wrote, it really is, is gearing towards the people that own and operate their small business and own their actual property. My concern is, even talking to some people on the weekend, that has been extremely affected by the new restrictions. What can we do as a municipality for the ones that have no relief because they are renting, and in turn they're having to pay their taxes and potentially their utilities, and there's just no operational funds coming in. So while this is great for the small businesses and that make under the property is valued less than $2 million, but what are we going to do for the businesses that are struggling to pay their own taxes at home and pay their own basically to survive when there's nothing that we're doing? Are you or Mr. Quinton aware of any other types of opportunities for us as a municipality that other municipalities are doing to ensure that we can help everybody as much as we can that own a small business when it comes to at least deferring their late payment fees?
So the municipalities are offering similar programs, either waiving taxes for certain classes or for all taxpayers. Many of them that we've seen are people are entering into pre-authorized payment plans. So maybe you won't pay your taxes for the first 6 months of the year, but then you'd pay double the taxes for the last 6 months of the year. And every municipality varies slightly in the type of program that's offered. I hear what you're saying in terms of the restrictions. The reason why we placed the $2 million limit was some of the bigger retail stores have done very well through the pandemic, in fact, posting record profits. So the idea behind that was so that those types of businesses weren't able to take advantage of something like this, and it was geared more towards small businesses. I'm not sure if Gord has anything to add.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think the other part of your question, Councillor Sakachi, was on with the ones that rent. And so this program, you know, for obviously a renter has to work with their landlord. And if it's a landlord that's also a small business owner that under the $2 million of assessed value, they could access this program and flow it through. So that's one way that it could work. But I think the other key is just making sure that all the businesses that do rent are aware of all the programs that are out there by both the federal and provincial government, and that they're accessing anything that's available to them. Economic development does a great job of working with those small businesses. So if they need help finding out what's available, I encourage them to contact our economic development department. For example, if someone is a business is completely closed with the current lockdown, similar to the one in the winter, the province had a program where both the property taxes and utilities, and sometimes our rent was covered by the province during lockdown periods. So I just encourage everyone to make sure that they're accessing those upper level programs, as with municipal taxes, it covers municipal operations that are ongoing, and we're not allowed to run deficits, where it really does fall on the provincial and federal government to help when larger assessments or larger dollar amounts of help are needed.
Thank you, Gord. I guess just to play out, a scenario, and then I'll ask you a question. So if a current business that rents has $3,200 in expenses, and the current benefits that they receive is $1,800. So let's say they're having a $1,400 or in change shortfall. So now they're already being faced with a challenging decision to see what they're going to pay. And to me, the utilities, food for the family, ensuring that the house is in a state of living. One of the first things that you're going to default on is likely going to be your tax payments. And then as a municipality, you're saying, well, that's fine, but you're going to then also have to pay the late fees. So I guess my question would be: is there not a way that we can? I know that Mr. Torrance had indicated that for residential, it would be challenging because of the volume of of applications. Is there not a way that we could say, if you can present your municipal business license and the shortfalls that you're seeing, or just indicate that you've been closed down, that we could at least receive those applications if they can prove that they have operationally been impacted and that they own a small business?
Thank you again for the question. I think the issue is, as a municipality, we only have a relationship with the property owner. So that's the difficulty of us passing through any benefit to a small business that rents space is it's two levels down as far as entering a contract where we're waiving a penalty to the landlord, and therefore they must enforce not collecting rent. It's really an area that we have we don't really have a legal mechanism to force that compliance. And I think that's the difficulty in that, where it's more it's much easier for the provincial and federal governments that collect corporate income taxes to be the ones that are managing that relationship to those small businesses that rent. So I'm understanding that nothing about COVID's fair, right? And I know you're trying to get to an equitable spot. This is one way where we can help those that own small businesses with allowing deferral of their tax payments to August, when we hope that with vaccines and following up the rules of public health, that we can get back to businesses being open much sooner than that, hopefully. But it's an inequity that's a challenge, and the only thing that I'm seeing from other municipalities in Ontario as well is allowing these deferrals to property owners.
Well, I appreciate all your comments, Mr. Quinton. This is my last question. So we all know about the Safe Startup Fund money that was allocated to municipalities, and now we're seeing a stricter lockdown than we had seen over the course of periods of time before in regards to the effects. Has there been any indication trickle down to the municipal levels of any kind of other funding that's going to be coming down for these businesses? And if not, is it possible for the municipality to at least advocate to the province in regards to ensuring our small businesses are continuing to be thought about with the stricter lockdown? And that is all for my comments and questions.
So certainly advocating on behalf of small business is a role of council, that if there was a motion to, for example, for the mayor to write a letter to the province to support small businesses, and particularly those that rent, and having some type of sharing these plans with the landlord and the renter to come to a long-term agreement to keep them operational till we get through this. We of course would support any of those types of requests by council. I think that's we have control over property taxes, which deals with owners, and I think the renters that operate small businesses, I think that has to come from the provincial and federal level. That any advocacy by council is welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Quinton. I'll definitely be drafting something up for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Crew, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I think that Councillor Sakachi covered just about everything that I was going to say. One of the questions I have about this report is notification. I think I read something in there that the businesses need to notify the municipality. Can you explain that?
Thank you, Councillor. This will be an application-based process. So the property owner, the business owner, will need to contact the municipality. We'll issue something, a media release, in the next day or two. This is something that came together really quick at the end of last week. Okay. Identifying a process, how to contact us either through our website, through email, or by phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think that we've all been contacted by businesses that are feeling the pain of this pandemic more than others, particularly renters. And Councillor B. McGregor and myself have been talking to another business that's been doubly impacted. And it's really difficult when we are faced with upholding laws that are for the greater public health. And then we see our own local businesses feeling the pain, and that even, you know, the impact to them and to their being a productive citizen in our community, and you know, seeing all of the destruction that is happening. I just hope that Councillor Sakachi is going to draft a letter, and I think that that should come fairly soon. I don't know how long our businesses can take as many lockdowns as, you know, this is just growing instead of getting smaller, it feels like. But anyway, that's all of my comments. I really, I don't know how to help, and if we can just do this advocacy thing, I think that that's the best thing we can do. Thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Just to start with, when we talk about small businesses being affected by the lockdowns and obviously the loss of revenue and the loss of business, well, that obviously equates to people and families. You know, they don't walk away from their business and leave that debt and that turmoil there. It comes home with them with their empty pockets with no money in them because they haven't made any money, which I can attest to. You know, I got beat up by this thing. So there's that. Secondly, when we talk about late penalties, what we're really referring to is interest, I believe, on the non-payment of taxes. So it's not so much a penalty, I don't believe, it's interest. And by charging this interest on small businesses, which it's not on small businesses, it's on commercial landowners, that injection of revenue into the municipality, that's not budgeted for, so that's kind of gravy. It's free money, really. Like, hate to put it that way, but it is. So I don't think that the municipality is losing any forecasted revenue by giving up voluntarily, dismissing interest, because we were expecting to be paid, so therefore we budgeted for being paid. We didn't budget for not being paid and getting interest on top of it. So with that, I'd like to make an amendment to this, that this this relief also applied to residential tax arrears throughout July 2021. Now, I understand there's going to be some pushback on this because oh, I'm sorry. People are going to probably, you know, assume that, well, some will just take advantage of this and not pay their taxes on time, knowing that there's no interest penalty. And sure, that's going to be the case. And, you know, I have great faith in the people of Chatham-Kent that nobody wants to get behind on their taxes. I also understand that the application process would be overwhelming to staff, and it would just be illogical to go through that process because it just wouldn't work. It would be too much. So if we could have a blanket relief to residential tax arrears, we're not relieving anybody of their residential tax obligations. We're just relieving them of the penalties. People that can pay will, because they just will. If there was no late payment fee on my union gas bill or Integris, I don't think that I would not pay the bill for a couple of months just because I could, because then I would just have a gigantic bill 3 months down the road. So it just, you know, logically it doesn't make any sense. But for the people that do need the relief, and again, it's the small business people that go home and have these expenses, this is where the relief is needed and necessary. And again, the municipality is not losing anything. We're not losing tax revenue. We're just losing interest that was never budgeted for in the first place. And considering the ridiculousness of this virus and how it never seems to end, and I understand both sides of, you know, the lockdown arguments, and I get it. Whatever the case, the suffering that's out there for people, particularly small business people, restaurant people, barbershops, hair salons, gym owners, you know, the people that have been locked down forever and ever, providing some relief to the small business is great, and that's one thing, and I appreciate that and I support that. But I think we also have to apply that same relief to that person that goes home and opens up their mail and has their residential tax bill. So again, the amendment would be to apply how do we refer to it? The tax arrears relief to residential homeowners through July 31st, 2021. Thank you, Mayor.
If I can just step in, I'd like to clarify something. So the municipality does budget for late penalty charges. We have a budget of $1.2 million. So if we are to open this up to essentially all property owners, it would be about $100,000 a month. So if we deferred to August, it would be, depending on whether it's just current year taxes or we consider prior year tax arrears as well, somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000 for 4 months. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was not aware that we did budget for late payments. And if that's the case, I'll still let the motion stand or the amendment stand. These are crazy times. And, you know, it's very difficult in a municipality this size or any size to try and differentiate between, you know, who's going to make, you know, or who's going to take advantage of this kind of thing and who's not. If it's a loss, I just think the need's out there, and you know, there's so many people aside from what we read about and we see about on social media. The amount of different people that have lost their jobs, have their jobs reduced. I think it's something that we can do, and in the scheme of things, in a $300 million annual corporation, you know, if it's a couple $100,000 of lost revenue, which is not guaranteed, that's only assuming, right, that people are going to be late. So we don't know that. For the benefit that it would bring to people that are going to be in pretty tough shape, you know, I think it's worthwhile. And again, these are COVID times. This is crazy stuff. Like we've never been through this before. And if the loss, if I can just ask in return to that statement, what would the municipality be losing with the current recommendation of relieving the small business payments?
Okay, Councillor Bondi, what you're suggesting has been put up there. Is that what you're looking at right there that's on the screen now?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kenneth.
So is this an application, or are you saying no, it's anyone, all residential now has an extra 3 months to pay their taxes and with no arrears penalties?
Well, Mayor Kenneth, actually, I would prefer be an application, but I was listening that is effectively impossible due to staff. Now, I would like it to be through application. I don't think that application would have to be that erroneous if people can apply for $2,000 or whatever the CERB thing was in 5 seconds over the phone. I don't know how. Like, I would rather it be through application, of course, because, you know, just hearing that this would be a projected loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars, no, I don't want that to happen. But you know, I'm at the mercy of staff here. Is it logical that it be an application process, or could it just be simply like if you apply, you're relieved, you know, without investigation, etc.? If that was the case, then I don't think it would be that erroneous on staff to be able to do that. So I'll have to look for some direction from staff on that.
Any comment from staff on this one? Could it be application based? I know we talked that it was going to be very onerous, but is there some process you can make it pretty easy?
I don't. We haven't considered it to this point because of the volume. We don't have a system to manage volumes in the thousands. It's something that may need to be tracked through spreadsheets and other things. I think our preference would be that if it's not the application base for small business, or if we are going to open up to the residential class, that our preference would be that we just waive all penalties on those classes. Gord, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, that's correct. We we could take the time to develop an application process, but we have some staffing resource issues currently that would be a challenge. So I think we'll just leave it how the motion is.
Okay.
All right,
Well, thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Gord.
I'll need a seconder for that motion.
I'd be happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Thompson.
Councillor Tom seconds. So we'll vote on this one first, and then we'll go back to the other one. So if clear the hands, so are any hands I see up here, I'm assuming is relates to this particular motion. And I'll start with Councillor Sakachi, then Councillor McGrail.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I guess my question would be, so at this point, they would not have to show any type of implication in regards to owning a small business. It's just going to be across the board. Every single person cannot pay their taxes, even if they can afford to, and there's no late payment. It's not going to be just because at the top it says waiving late payment charges for small businesses. And then essentially it's just every single residential aspect. Is that correct?
Yeah, under this motion, we would see this as every property owner, it takes out the relationship to small business. If you don't pay your taxes, we'll waive the late penalty charge until August.
And Mr. Torrance, the reason my hand was up was in regards to the clarification, because I know in our budget binders, it's always prevalent in regards to the anticipated monies received from the late payment. So if we're short, let's say $200,000 or $300,000 at the end of this year in projections, can you just explain what would happen in regards to that shortfall?
So we have a year-end variance report that we do every year, or we have in non-COVID years, we generally have a surplus of a couple $1 million. And we would typically cover something like this from that. We may have to we'd probably see where we end up in the 2021 year-end variance, and then make some recommendations at the end of the year. We may have to transfer money from a reserve or something to fund it.
And the last quick question then, in regards to if there is another type of funding like the Safe Startup funding, is this something that can be recovered potentially in those funds if we receive some funds from the province?
I'm going to defer to Gord quickly on this one, but I don't think we can use Safe Restart funding for waiving penalties and taxes or waiving taxes. Gord, do you have anything on that?
Thank you for the question. I think it is eligible. We did use that last year. This is basically the same program as we did last year if this passes. Where we don't know where we're going to be though is there enough funding coming through from the federal and provincial governments to cover where we are at the end of the year. And the reason why we don't know is because we don't know what how long our costs are going to continue for throughout the organization. So it's hard to say whether there's going to be money left over at year end to cover this or not. If not, we'll, like Matt said, we'll have to tap into some of our own reserves to make it balanced. But I think we can at least, if funds are available, we would try to have this. We're talking. I think Matt said between 250 and 300,000. That could be the implication. Might be less depending on how many people take advantage of it. And so we'll definitely try to have the Safe Restart funding from the federal and provincial government cover it. But if that runs out on PPE or other, we have an extra ambulance service and a lot of other things on the go too that we need to pay for first before this one would come up.
Thank you, Mr. Quinton. I appreciate that. I'm just the reason why I wanted the floor again, because I was somewhat confused because there was conversations that I did have in regards to staff, and basically what Matt Torrance just said, and not to throw any staff, I'm saying this very respectfully. It's just that it was indicated to me when I was speaking about this that it was probably not And now we're saying it's probably easier to go this way than the other way. So I was just a little bit confused about what this motion was different than the context earlier. And I say this with all due respect.
Yeah, and maybe I could just add on that. Everything with the province right now, with all the things that they're dealing with as well. It's not, I'm not faulting them. It's just, it is what it is. There's a lot of gray areas and a lot of things change day to day. And originally we were asked to report on 2020 COVID expenditures by the end of March, but they since delayed that and still haven't come out with the claim form. So a lot of this is being worked on off the fly, and a lot of gray areas up to interpretation. And you know, in the end, I just mentioned that we're claiming last year's late payment charges that we waived, but in the end they might deny that claim as well. So this is a lot of unknowns.
Thank you, Gord. That is all for me. And like I said, I do say those comments with the utmost respect. It's not meant to demean or disrespect any members of staff at all. Thank you.
I would go to Councillor McGrail and Councillor Thompson.
Councillor McGrail, are you muted? Councillor McGrail, are you there?
I'll go to Councillor. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm having problems with my button here. We're good now. We're good now. Thank you, Mayor Canna. So my first question is that, Gord, how does this affect the municipality's cash flow? Would it immediately affect it, or could we possibly get this and have a proper cash flow without having to borrow money, more money than we would?
Thank you, Mayor Canna. Thank you for the question. There's no issue with cash flow. It's basically opportunity cost of a very low interest rate that we'd be earning on our cash balances. So and with only deferring for 3 months, it's not that significant of a loss of interest income.
Okay, and just one more question. The way I read this is that it says that this relief of late payment charges also be provided to residential taxpayers through July 31st. So the way I'm thinking it is that it's for this current payment, not back payments.
So I think we need some clarification on the motion. The report that our recommendations were for current year taxes, so anything billed in 2021. The way this is worded, it's kind of open-ended, so we'd want some clarification if Councillor Bondi or Council wishes for this to be just current year taxes or to apply to all arrears going back to 2020, 2019, etc.
Great. Yeah, I have the same question. Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I would think it would provide the same relief that the original recommendation, the intention of the original recommendation, if that clears it up.
So if we could just change the wording to residential current year tax arrears, that would take care of that.
Great.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I want to say thank you very much to Councillor Bondi for bringing this forward. It addressed my major concern with this report. I was just curious in regards to there's some comments about the potential cost. We already did this or something similar to this once back in April of last year, I believe. Did we ever figure out what the uptake was for the residential side of things, people that took advantage of this, and what that opportunity cost was for us?
I don't have it in front of me. We do know that people the majority of people continue to pay their taxes on the original schedule. Some people did take advantage of it. In terms of waiving the arrears, though, this will have a real budget impact because the people that were going to pay their taxes are going to pay their taxes anyway. So in terms of our interest on money in our bank, we'll continue to get that, but we will be waiving somewhere in the neighborhood. If we're only doing current year, I'd estimate about $75,000 a month in interest penalties that we will have to fund.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because I remember the previous report where we moved the late payment charges on the current year tax arrears from April 1st to July 10th. And at that time, we estimated it was going to be about $100,000. But either way, I think Councillor Bondi was right. I think in a budget of $300 million, it's important we do everything we can. And admittedly, and frustratingly, I think for a lot of people, council included, there aren't a lot of tools in our toolbox as far as what we can do to really offset the impacts of COVID. But I think this is something we can do for businesses. And I also worry about, you know, those people that those small businesses employ, those people that have mortgages and homes and families. So I think extending this out to the residential ratepayers is the right thing to do. And I will be supporting it. And that is why I seconded it. Thank you.
Councillor O'Shea, followed by Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one question. Could we not keep the original part, the small businesses, to have to call or apply, and then keep the residential not have to apply, or are we getting too difficult?
We can do whatever council chooses. I think in terms of fairness, our opinion would be that it should be the same rules in each class.
Yes, but then any business could do this. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So Walmart could do it if they wanted.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just wanted to clarify on that one. If we look at this one, this says residential, and the other one we're going to be looking at says small business with assessment of less than 2 million or less. So your example of Walmart would be excluded, but there'd also be commercial, industrial, or businesses that potentially have greater than 2 million assessment, but have a lot of trouble with it. So if we look at the totality of what we're looking at here, we will be excluding some taxpayers from tax relief. Is that correct, Mr. Quinton?
Like I realize that, yeah, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. This is, I believe, an amendment which on to the current the motion that was in the report, which did have the application-based 200,000. So I think we would need council to clarify. Right, I think what we would pass right now, you know, if the amendment being on all residential, and that for business, it would still be, could be, if it's passed as written right now, based on all these rules, the $2 million in an application. If Councillor Bondi's amendment meant to just say deferring all current year tax arrears to July 31st, that would we could just basically turn off the interest for the current year, and everyone would benefit for it, or council could go the way of passing how it is on the screen with the 2 million limit and a application still for the business sector.
Mayor Kenneth, if I could, that was my intention, was that the application process would still apply to the small business. And again, when we refer to small business, we're talking about the landowners, right? Which are typically like Skyline and these gigantic corporations. The relief's not going to the small business person, it's going to the landowner. That's who pays the property taxes primarily. So my amendment was to waive the arrears on residential properties without application, but not to exclude the application process for the small business, you know, the commercial industrial. So if that clears it up. So we would, the initial recommendation would stand, the amendment would stand as it is, that the residential arrears would be carte blanche sort of waived. And again, it's just the interest. I think somebody said, well, somebody doesn't have to pay property tax. Well, he's still have to pay the taxes. He doesn't have to pay the arrears. But Gordon, just so that we're clear and for council's ability to make a decision on this, I would like to see the recommendation stand as it is, that the application process, which sounds like it's manageable by staff, obviously it's their recommendation, that stay the same, and that the residential relief be free of the application process. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Councillor-
fine. As written, that's how I understand it.
Okay, Councillor Solomon, followed by Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, Worship. The recommendation as initially read is helpful to landlords. It doesn't help the small businesses who are mainly tenants who pay their taxes through their lease. And that's a shame, and I understand why you can't do anything about it, but that is the majority, vast majority of small businesses. So that's the reality of that one. The second one is, it gives me a bit of maybe lack of understanding or a bit of concern. It doesn't help the majority of residential taxpayers because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Gord, but taxes are paid by residential taxpayers in several different ways. If they have a mortgage, it's paid through their mortgage payment. And so they're paying it whether this motion passes or not. So they're not getting any deferral. Or if they don't pay it, then they're in default on their mortgage. So if you've got a mortgage out there and you live in a house, this isn't helping you. This is the second payment. First was March 1st, and this would apply to the May payment. I don't know how many people still do this, but there was a practice for years and years where they'd give a check, two checks, one for the May payment, one for the March payment, and submit that, but it would be post-dated. I don't know how you're going to get those back. So that one isn't going to work real well either. And then there are the electronic withdrawals that people have set up. And I don't know what percentage you have of that. This seems basically for people who will walk in or send in their May payment. And I don't know what percentage that is of your total, but I'm sure you've tracked it somehow.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so we have 14,000 customers that are on the budget plan or on some type of pre-authorized payment plan. So if they're on either one, the budget or the due date payment plan, we would still be taking their payments out. The budget plan's on the 15th of the month, every month for 12 months. And then there's the due date plan, which would be coming out May 1st. They basically would contact us to say, residents could contact us to say they want to come off the plan, which then becomes quite an administrative deal, taking off the plan, and then of course at some point in time they'll want to go back on the plan later. So but it can be done, and you're correct that if you have a mortgage, it depends on your residential mortgage, particularly those that are way leveraged, under 25% down payment. Usually that was forced that the property taxes is paid by the bank. For some of the ones that perhaps have more equity in their houses, that they may have the option of paying taxes directly. But you're right, that does not everybody on the residential side will be assisted with this program either, because if they're locked into mortgage.
Well, and then the other group who give post-dated checks, I guess they could call you up and drive you crazy by asking for the post-dated check back for May 1st.
That's exactly what we'd have to do. Is we have in our safe the ones that dropped off the two checks at the March first due date, we had the second check held in our safe right now, and we would have to go through those searching for the check.
And there are still a group, a sufficient group who do that?
We're having a lot of success. More and more people are moving to the automated payments. Like I say, we have 14,000 property owners that are on either the due date or our budget payment system. But I couldn't put a number on how many post-dated checks, but I'm guessing 500 to 1,000 sitting in the vault.
Okay, and the 14,000 you're talking about is 14,000 out of how many residential taxpayers?
I think there's, off the top of my head, there's 44,000 tax bills. A total tax bills of all property classes.
Yeah, and a smaller amount would be residential than the 44, obviously. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to support the motion, but I just think people should understand sometimes when you're trying to do a really good thing and help people, it isn't going to be spread equitably or equally across the piece. And the other one, the first motion, I'm going to support that. But again, when the majority of small businesses are tenants, they're not getting the benefit of this. But it's a good try. I got to applaud that. Thank you.
I agree, Councillor Solomon. Nothing about COVID-19 is fair. How it distribution across the population, and it's you try to do things, but I hope we can use funding from the provincial and federal government to offset this. But if not, it actually comes back to the rest of the taxpayers to be funding it from our current reserves. There's a lot of ideas, and it's hard to decipher what are great ideas or good ideas or bad ideas.
Councillor Latimer.
Thank you. My comments have been covered.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to make a couple comments as well. I understand where we're all going here, and I think we all collectively as council this is the one little thing that we can do. My issue with this is I see that originally we started to help small business with what the motion was, and we're still, as it stands right now, we're looking at if everything's just approved as we've that residential doesn't have to do anything, they can just go ahead. But small business, who we're really trying to help, they have to jump through the hoops and saying, my small business is, and whatever application process it is, even if it's 5 minutes, and we're still going to exclude people or businesses that will say, I really need that support, and now I've even been excluded because my property value is $3 million. I'm a small manufacturer. I'm down 30–40%, and you're going to tell me that I cannot apply to this. I'm looking back, and if we're going to go down this way, me personally, I like to say, do what we did last year. I know we deferred to July 25th. We'll do to July 31st. We had a pretty good track record of people paying, and I realize there's a potential for a large taxpayer to say, I'll delay that, but we didn't see that, and I can't imagine those large taxpayers, for the most part, taking advantage of it. So to me, if we approve this as it is now, we're creating a complicated thing to go out and tell taxpayers, okay, if you're residential, you don't have to apply. If you're small business, 2 million or less, you have to apply. And if you're bigger than that, tough luck, you don't get any benefit. So I think we're heading down a quagmire of difficulty here that to me, if we approve this, I would like to see it change where we just take a commercial and industrial and apply the same logic to them. Anyways, so we'll vote on the Councillor Bondi. You have final words on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Caniff. I agree with you, and I agree that it does make for complications for small business versus residential. But as staff has just told me, to do it through an application process with residential customers is basically impossible or far too complicated. So there's that. If it was if it was doable, then yeah, that would be the logical way to go. But it's obviously I've been told that that's not doable. And the other thing, just in response to Councillor Solomon, I agree 100% that people that are on pre-authorized payment or with 2 post-dated checks are likely not going to receive the benefit of this. But I would suggest that people on pre-authorized payments or have contributed pre-authorized checks probably are going to be okay, because if you've signed up for pre-authorized payments, you're probably going to be all right on this one. And the post-dated checks, I'm sorry. And they're likely okay, but if they're not okay, those checks will bounce. You know, that's possible too. And I also agree with Councillor Solomon in that the relief that we're offering to small businesses isn't to small businesses, because almost, well, I don't know the numbers and I don't want to guess, but many small businesses are tenants. And this is no relief to the tenant. This is this is relief to the landowner or building owner that may or may not be transferred in goodwill to the tenant. We don't know. That's up to the landlord. They all, you know, there's all sorts of different programs federally that are here, then they're running out. I think, I don't know. I'm out of this game now, but this relief really is to the landowner, the building owner, which is great. And that's a good thing. But my whole point here is that my amendment is to hopefully benefit the people that run the small business, that work at the small business. And is it perfect? No, it's not. But this is COVID. Everything's crazy, right? So the amendment is to do something, hopefully, that we can help. And again, we're not relieving taxes. We're just relieving the penalty, the interest penalty on the taxes. Nobody's getting out of their taxes by just, you know, saying, oh, well, well, frankly, they don't have to say anything. There's no application process. So it's just a relief of the interest on the taxes. That's all. And no, is it perfect? No, it's not. Is it unequal? Yes, it is. But I don't know what else we can do to solve it. And I don't think we have the time to. So that's why I put it forward. And I hope it gets your support, Council. Thank you. And thank you very much, Gord, and all staff for helping meander our way through this. Thank you.
All right. Councillor C. McGregor, I'll let you come in real fast. I know this is the last one. So if you have a quick comment to make on this.
And I do, and hopefully you'll entertain this. This has gone so many different directions and ways. It's very confusing. Would I be able to make a motion to refer this back to administration to come up with a more equitable recommendation that might fit all categories: industrial, commercial, residential, etc., similar to what we did before? May I do that if I get it seconded with these other ones on the floor?
Okay, well, Councillor Finn, will you second this?
Happy to second.
Okay, so Councillor C. McGregor, you're looking to defer any decision, whether it's this one or the small business, to come back. And I'll go to Gordon in a second here, but that's what you're looking at is for the motion to defer this, because given that we have till May 1st, that's when the next tax is due. So we have, so we'll have
we have a meeting next week and the week after. I'm just looking for a better arrangement that will suit all of our citizens, businesses, etc. in Chatham-Kent, as opposed to picking and choosing in between here. And we're missing some big pockets, possibly of business owners that actually rent business. And so we've added this other one on, which is more difficult. Some are applying, some aren't applying. Some are missed, some will benefit. I just think it should go back with a clear recommendation to come from administration, because the intent of it obviously is very positive and needed for our community. And I don't want to cause them any extra work, but this is a mess right now.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Quinton, do you have some comments? And then I'll go to Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I get what Councillor McGregor is saying, that it's confusing and a mess, but I do want to remind council of, the due date is upcoming, and if making that decision on April 26th, it gets it tight to the deadline next week's a planning meeting only, with a extended council workshop on development charges. I think council can make a decision tonight, and as a third option is just to go back to exactly what we did last year, with a deferral of all current year property taxes to July 31st. And so if we came with our recommendation already as far as administration, it was just to assist the small business. But if council wants to, it's the easiest process is for us to simply turn off interest for current year's taxes till July 31st. And now I know the clerk's office, there's procedures to go through on what motion goes through first and all that, but it's almost turn down both of these motions and someone else make a motion to just waive all penalty on current year till July 31st would get it solved tonight.
Mayor Ken, if I could change my amendment to Gord's suggestion, I'd be happy to do that. And then we can make the decision tonight, not kick it down the road. So just
I think, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry for interrupting. No, go ahead. I think we're going to have to deal with them in order though first. And if we get to that, then.
So to clarify, maybe the clerk can come in and clarify, just because we are starting to get a lot of motions piling up here. I'd just like to follow order here.
Yes. Okay, so we have two motions on the floor. We have the main motion and then we have an amendment from Councillor Bondy. So we do have to deal with those first. So the option is that the mover of the amendment either withdraws or we vote on it. And if it fails and we go to the main motion, and if it fails, then we can take a new motion. So the options right now are either vote on them and see how they go through, or they can be withdrawn. But until then, we can't receive any other motions other than a motion to refer back to administration, and it can go back and come back at another council date.
Okay, sure. Well, Judy, I'd like my motion to stand and we can vote on it. I don't know which one comes first, the original one or mine, but I like mine. I kind of like Gord's idea too, but I think this one's, well, mine. So there's that. But if that's the process, that this amendment gets voted on first, then we will follow your direction, Judy.
Yes, so I guess the third piece is that we would vote on this as far as deferring. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, if Councillor C. McGregor and Finn have continued to put their motion on the floor to refer back to administration, we will do that now. If that passes, then it goes back to administration and we'll bring it back at the April 26th council meeting.
Okay, so Councillor B. McGregor has the floor next.
Thank you. And, my question was related to the referral back to administration, because I think one of the, as we sort of modify this on the fly, a couple of things that were popping into my mind, and maybe not everyone on council would be aware of some of the programs, just if they weren't involved in a small business, but there is the Ontario small business grant program right now that's for property tax and energy costs rebates. So I would hate to think that a business would forego applying for a rebate, thinking they were deferring their property taxes, when the rebate would actually be much more financially beneficial to their business. So that program, is there right now, and small businesses certainly can apply for it. And then for those businesses that don't own their property and are paying rent, there is the rent subsidy right now as well, which the subsidy matches your percent decrease in revenue from a year-over-year basis. So there is that program out there that really is meant to help with those fixed monthly costs. So I think when we're trying to sort of layer something on top of there, sometimes it's important to know what programs are out there already, and if we're actually fixing a gap that exists, or if we're duplicating and maybe making things more onerous on some of the business owners. So just if we do end up referring this back, I think some summation of those couple of programs and how they impact local businesses might be helpful to see when we're making that decision.
Okay, so the first, let's do a synopsis here. So we've got a motion on the floor to defer this. If that fails, then we will go to this motion, which covers off residential current year taxes. And then pass or fail on that one, we'll go with the original motion to talk about small business. So the motion to defer is the first one we're going to vote on here. Sorry, yes, that's the one we're going to vote on. The motion amendment referred back to administration. Councillor Sakatchi, did you have a question specific about?
Yeah, just a point of order, Mayor Kenneth. I know that next week is a planning meeting only, but because of the impact of this and having some more staffing feedback, is it possible to? I'm not sure how our bylaws are wrote in regards to. Is it possible to include this on next week so we're not waiting to the 26th? Just wanted to ask that question quickly. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Sakatchi. So it definitely is an option. We have, I believe, 8 planning reports, and we have a development charge workshop, and then we can definitely add this as a combined meeting. But I do refer back to Gord with regards to will the report be ready and for the agenda on Wednesday, keeping in mind that we could put it out as late as Friday as a supplemental.
Gord?
Yeah, thank you. If the clerk's office will allow it on the agenda, the report that you see was written last Friday in a hurry because of after the provincial changes came out. We thought small businesses were the most hit by it, so we can try to turn it around quickly, if not for Wednesday, for Friday.
So that will provide you enough time if we do it next Monday for you to implement everything and us to advertise it accordingly and everything else, Gord?
We would try our best, right? We as far as how quickly the messaging will get out to people,
I'm fully.
I do want to encourage. And perhaps Kathy Hoffman will have to comment on that. Depending on what method we go, I know our phone lines are quite busy now with COVID issues, and if it went application based for all residents, of course and even the ones calling up to pull their post-dated checks and everything, there's a lot of issues. So I don't want to create such a log jam that it becomes administratively challenging to be getting everyone dealt with. So perhaps I can turn it to Kathy to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gord's right. I think whatever council ultimately decides, certainly what we want to make sure is that we have enough time as well to react to our public and our residents to be able to implement something like this. And so the less complicated it is from an administrative perspective, the more effective that's going to be for us to be able to implement and reduce frustration. We have thousands and thousands of customers, many who are already on pre-approved payment plans with us, and many who will, if you pass something tonight, who will commence calling tomorrow to provide, looking for information and options. So I would certainly support, let's, kind of take our time sorting out what is the best process, or at a minimum, keep simple whatever the administrivia is going to be around it.
So Mayor Kenneth, if I'm okay with putting an amendment to the current motion on the floor, that if we need an exception because it is a planning meeting to come back to next week's meeting of council. If the mover and seconder is okay with that, I'd like to see it done next week. I know it's going to be busy, but I think that that's the most effective way of collecting all the conversation that we've had, you know, in this meeting.
Councillor Sakachi, we can't take an amendment to the referral back, but administration does hear you, and in there it doesn't state the date. So we will be bringing it back on the 19th, and the agenda will go out for that on Wednesday. And I think I've heard Gord say that they will try their best to get the report out as soon as possible. And as soon as the clerk's office receives it, we'll get it online and ready for public consumption. And we'll bring it back on the 19th after the planning and the workshop.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. We're going to put a vote on, we're going to vote on this right now.
So to be clear, council, this is to refer this back to administration for a report to come back on April 19th. All votes are in. Motion passes.
Okay, we'll go to notice of motions. We have 5 of them. So we'll start with Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Sakachi, then Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, Councillor Crew, then Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I, Councillor Mark Oche, here provide notice. I will bring the following motion to the April 26th meeting for voting and discussion, whereby we are in another lockdown, which is hurting the small businesses in Chatham-Kent, and whereas we do not know when will stop, and whereas Chatham-Kent is and has been doing an excellent job of keeping our COVID-19 numbers low, and whereas every lockdown, Chatham-Kent is losing more small businesses. Therefore, it is requested that the Mayor send a letter to the Honourable Premier Doug Ford requesting the Premier to stop the lockdowns in the municipality of Chatham-Kent. Thank you.
Okay, I want to, we still have 5 motions, but it's Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte has 2 of them, so she'll be reading 3rd and 5th. So we'll go to Councillor Sakachi, then Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Anthony Sakachi, here provide notice. I'll bring the following motion to the April 26th meeting for voting and discussion. Whereas Chatham-Kent is home to 106 species at risk, and whereas many of those SARs live and nest in significant wetland areas near roadways, and whereas the areas sorry, my phone died here. Mayor, can you come back to me, sir?
Certainly. Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, will go to you for your first motion, and then over to Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I only have one notice of motion. I'd like to bring something up under communication items. So just one. And here it is. I, Councillor Karen Kirkwood-Whyte, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the 2021 April 26th Council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas the municipality of Chatham-Kent has already seen the benefit of implementing the easy-to-remember 311 telephone line for accessing and connecting to municipal information, and whereas the municipality of Chatham-Kent has recognized, through the work of partnerships with numerous community groups and organizations, that it is critical to ensure that barriers are removed for those individuals and caregivers who are required to respond quickly for help. And whereas the federal government has passed a motion to adopt 988, a national 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline, and whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200,000%, and whereas existing suicide prevention hotlines require the users to remember a 10-digit number and go through directories or to be placed on hold. Be it therefore resolved that the municipality of Chatham-Kent endorses this 988 suicide crisis line initiative and that a letter demonstrating Chatham-Kent's support be sent to the local MP, MPP, Honorable Patty Highview, Federal Minister of Health, the CRTC, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Scotch, are you ready now?
Yes, I am, and I do apologize, Mayor Caniff.
No problem.
I, Councillor Anthony Sakachi, here provide notice. I'll bring the following motion to the April 26th meeting for voting and discussion. Whereas Chatham-Kent is home to 106 species at risk, and whereas many of those species at risk live and nest in significant wetland areas near roadways, and whereas the areas are spread throughout many wards in CK, and whereas the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority has identified nearly a dozen species at risk areas that involve significant road crossing, and where a significant number of species at risk are crossing roadways due to the presence of habitat on both sides of the roadway, and whereas busy road and highways in Ontario and in Chatham-Kent pose a significant threat to reptile and amphibian species each year, and whereas countless turtles and snakes are run over by cars and killed each year on Chatham-Kent roads, including many nesting females, and whereas Chatham-Kent is home to 7 species of risk turtles and 5 snakes, be it resolved in partnership with the LTVCA, CK administration will develop a yearly media campaign commencing this year to increase public messaging and promote awareness, education, and opportunities to protect and mitigate wildlife crossings and species at risk areas of concern. And 2, in partnership with the LTVCA, CK administration will return to council with a report detailing the locations of local signage designed to protect species at risk in accordance with the Ontario Traffic Manual. In this desired funding partnership, the LTVCA will be responsible for mounting hardware and signs, while the municipality will provide posts and installation.
Okay, Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Marjorie Crew, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion on April 26, 2021 council meeting for discussion and voting. Considering that local media is local businesses and that we are an age-friendly community, I move that administration review our advertising practices and provide a report back to council with recommendations providing balanced advertising, including social media and local media, considering all the citizens of Chatham-Kent.
Okay, closed session report, Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. And through the mayor, just gotta get it in front of me again. Okay. I would move that council be move the receipt of council's closed session report from tonight. Council directed administration on potential litigation and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with regard to Wind Farm Road Use Agreement, Section 2392 E&F of the Municipal Act 2001. And council receive information on personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, CAO performance review, Section 2392B of the Municipal Act.
Does a little pooch second that?
Well, I'm glad you recognized it was a pooch. Half the people think he's a bird, so thank you.
Councillor Crew, can I get you to second that, please?
So seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. The approval communication items. Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, can I get you to put that on the floor along with Councillor Wright?
Yes, so moved. Oh, I have something I want to bring up.
Yes. So we'll move everything and then you can talk about the one item.
Okay.
I'll second that. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Kirkwood-Whyte, you had one item to talk about?
I did. There was one item in the information package. And speaking as one who didn't pay as close attention as I should have as a teenager, I just wanted to highlight the fact that May is Melanoma and Skin Cancer Awareness Month. We don't do deputations any longer, but it's an opportunity to just give folks a friendly reminder that are listening in that skin cancer is the most common of all cancers. Skin self-examination should be performed on a monthly basis because they're highly treatable when they're detected early. So just for those listening in, be sun safe. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to non-agenda business. Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm sorry, I didn't know if I hit that button. I'd like to ask April if she could give us an update on the COVID vaccine rollout, the challenges and quantity, availability, how many have been vaccinated in Chatham-Kent overall. I know it's been in some media releases, but I think that it warrants being mentioned here. And I'd like to know about the ages of those that are being infected, either locally and provincially, and do you see any shifts in age in particular with the vaccine rollout being more for seniors in the beginning? So I've sent April the highlights so she can give us an update, please.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Certainly lots of questions from Councillor Crew. I'll try and do my best to go through these, and then certainly if I don't highlight everything, we can come back. I think what I'll start with saying is that currently in Chatham-Kent, we have 45 active cases that the team is still following and staying in contact with. Our current total number is 1,689 cases. We've had 13 deaths attributed to COVID-19. Currently, right now, we have no hospitalizations. Now, these numbers change and fluctuate, certainly day by day. We have 5 outbreaks, 2 in workplaces, 2 in schools, and 1 in a retirement home. So why these numbers are important? It's Councillor Crew's question around ages. I think we always tend to focus certainly on our older adults. They are certainly hit hardest by COVID-19 if they are infected by COVID-19. They tend to have numerous comorbidities that impact them and how their body responds to the virus. But when we look at the actual numbers, 53%, so over half of our COVID cases in Chatham-Kent have been in individuals under 40 years of age. So we always have to bear that in mind. We navigate through both getting vaccinations certainly well underway, and through any of our messaging, and where we begin to really work on moving towards vaccine acceptance and the importance of that. 39% of our cases are between 41 and 70, and right now only 8% of our cases are in individuals that are over 71 years of age. We did a great job through lots and lots of work in our long-term care homes and in our retirement homes of really keeping COVID out. And certainly what we are seeing now across the province, the outbreaks that are happening in long-term care and retirement homes, we are not seeing those outbreaks in residents. The vast majority of residents across the province are vaccinated. We are seeing those outbreaks still in staff, and the majority of those staff are unvaccinated. When we look at the urban-rural split, about 56% of our cases are urban, with the remainder being rural. What is cause for concern and why we must stay vigilant in terms of the public measure, of our cases, 9 of those cases have mutations that are related to the variant. And so we have received 5 confirmed back They have to go through additional sequencing once those mutations are found. So certainly of the 5 confirmed variants, of those 99 mutations, they are all the B117 variant, and that is the UK variant that we're seeing. When we turn to vaccine, 26,054 immunizations have been given in Chatham-Kent, and that right now we're sitting at 27% of our 16 years and above in terms of where we map that statistic. So we are doing very, very well, certainly higher than the provincial average, higher than the national average in terms of vaccinations per 100,000. The difficulty is that we are only receiving enough vaccine to run our clinic at the Bradley Centre really right around 2 days a week. That's it. We have capacity to run 7 days a week, but we are not receiving enough vaccine to be able to do that. We understand the pressure that the government's under in terms of getting vaccine to hotspots around the province. And so the team is, vaccine comes in and we get vaccine into arms as quickly as we can. We do now have 3 pharmacies in Chatham-Kent that have AstraZeneca vaccine. And that is Rexall on St. Clair, Shoppers on Queen, and McTavish in Dresden. So, and information is available on our website to access that, and on the Government of Ontario website as well. What's really exciting is we have 2 mobile clinics this week. One is in Wheatley on the 15th and at the Arena, and the other is in Highgate on the 17th at the Mary Webb Center. And so the vaccine that's being used at the Bradley Center is Pfizer vaccine. Moderna vaccine is much easier to transport, and so we are using what Moderna we have to do these mobile clinics, and we will begin to do other mobile clinics after we do these 2 initial ones. We are also using Moderna vaccine for all of our high-risk congregate care settings and individuals who are on chronic home care who cannot get out to any type of vaccine clinic. So I think I'll stop there, Mayor Caniff, and see if anyone has any other questions. But certainly getting through this pandemic, getting to the other side of COVID-19 is vaccination. And so we've heard lots tonight about the impact that this is having on our businesses, the impact that it is having on our citizens. We need to get people vaccinated if we really have that pathway forward to getting to the other side of this pandemic for sure. So that's my update, and hopefully, Councillor Crew, that answers your questions.
Thank you, April. It did. One other question that I had, the variant, UK variant, whatever the number is. How do you test for that?
So when they do the testing, the initial test comes back with just showing some type of mutation to that virus. And so then it has to go back. The lab well, they don't send it to us and back, but the lab retests it for sequencing. And that's a very sophisticated test that takes several weeks for the lab to be able to do that. There are a number of other locations, provinces, US as well, that are really looking at scaling back the actual sequencing testing for variants, because the predominant kind of positives are coming back now as variants. So it's lab testing that does that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of hands up. So we'll start with Councillor Pinsino, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to announce that Chatham-Kent population increased by one more here a week and a half ago. I gained a granddaughter, Greya Joan, 8 pounds, 6 ounces, and everybody's healthy.
You're really trying to push the population in Chatham-Kent up, aren't you? That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, we need voters, right?
Yes. Well, you have to wait a few years for that. Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. My questions are actually related to the announcement today by Doug Ford and Minister Licci about the province once again shutting down in-person instruction in schools. So the first question I have is directed to Dr. Radike. April, I'm wondering, with regards to the announcement, there was reference once again to free childcare for essential workers. And also other childcare comments around the challenge around childcare. So I'm wondering if you can provide some information around how Chatham-Kent works with our childcare providers who might be offering expanded services, and where parents would go if they have questions about options for childcare.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. So if anyone, certainly Councillor Harrigan highlighted the announcements from today quite well. Students will not return to classroom learning next week. They will all move to online learning, other than special education students and teachers who are able to continue with in-person learning. So we heard about this just before the Premier's announcement at 2:30. So we still have to meet with all of our childcare operators just to determine what childcare centers are going to be offering emergency childcare, where parents will be able to go to apply for that. What we do know is that the list of essential workers will be similar to the list that was used in the lockdown in January. So right after Christmas, it will be the same list. And we do know that the guidelines for running emergency childcare for essential workers will be similar to the guidelines we followed in January as well. So we've had some initial conversations with Kelly Emery, our Director of Childcare and Early Years. She will be issuing a media release. They were working on that late today that will go out tomorrow. That will detail all of the contact information that parents who require emergency childcare will need to go in order to be able to get on that list. And we're still, I would probably sum or end this with saying that we still have not received the guidelines in writing. So quite often comments are made and announcements happen on one day, and it's a day or two before we receive the documents in writing. But hopefully with them sticking to the guidelines from January, we should be able to get information out to parents really quite quickly. I hope that covers it. If I missed something, Councillor Harrigan, just let me know.
No, thank you very much, April. I appreciate that, and I think we're all in a similar scenario around scrambling for childcare arrangements for those of us in Chatham-Kent who have school-aged children. My next question is related to that and is directed to Ms. Hoffman. Kathy, given that Chatham-Kent is one of the largest employers in CK, what options are we offering or continuing to offer to staff who may suddenly be faced with learners at home during business hours next week?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a couple of options, Councillor Harrigan. So April 1, we implemented the Working Remotely pilot program that Council approved. For our listeners, in case they missed it at the time, we had been having employees working remotely due to pandemic reasons. And because of that, we started to roll out a formalized pilot project that really saw us take the opportunity to optimize having as many employees working remotely as possible based on the service that they provide. So right now we have about just in excess of 330 employees that are working remotely. So part of what we do when new changes come up from the Premier, like they are right now with the pandemic, is to slightly rejig again and say, what else do we need to change in order to try to accommodate what our employees' needs are? And the childcare needs are, very real as it relates to not being in school and working from home again. So our plan is always to work with each employee to see what it is that they need to have their childcare needs met. For example, it might be that we look at flexing their hours of work in a day. So they may batch their hours of work in a different kind of way, still working the same number of hours, but scheduling them in a slightly different way to be able to accommodate being available to their children if they need to assist them with online learning. We also would take a look at whether or not there's another opportunity to have them move to remote working if they aren't currently working remotely, and if the service that they deliver would allow for that. And in other situations, employees may simply ask us if they can start to book and use some of their Lure vacation time. And so certainly they have been doing that already. So it's a combination of things to try to make sure that we're supporting employees in the best way that we can and ease some of the challenges and stress that comes along with these changes. Does that answer your question, Councillor Harrigan?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you to Kathy and April for those responses. I think that, as a community, now is certainly a time for us to continue to stay the course and to try our very best to do what we can with what we have in the situation that we're in, and take care of the people that we love most. And we can certainly do that by continuing to follow those public health guidelines and trying our best to maintain positive attitudes and protect the mental health of ourselves and our families. So thank you both for that. And to the residents of Chatham-Kent, let's stay strong and we're in this together. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you. I wanted to take this time to thank the Come Together CK committee who organized the recent Facebook Live event featuring a very informative Q&A evening with Dr. Andrew Lands O'Brien, featuring vaccination facts, misconceptions, and considerations for you. And this was moderated by our own Blenheim Youth Center, Emily Roberts. This event was very, very well received, and there was much appreciation to the committee and Dr. Andrew and Emily for making this evening happen. And it was a very timely event, and I thought it would be a nice follow-up to Dr. Riedike's summation of what the vaccination situation currently is here in Chatham-Kent.
Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
I'm receiving quite a few calls, people along Talbot Trail, wanting to know where we're at with the dead end and what we're going. We have a study out, and I tell them that. Well, they're getting tired of hearing that because this is the second study, and that we've been working on. So they'd like to know if we are able to get part of the study, such as the second or third concession, complete, so that maybe we can get working on the road early 2022 instead of 2023. Obviously, they'd like it earlier than that, but I'm hoping that someone can get me some information on this if that's possible at all. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, it's Thomas Kelly, General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering. We will follow up with you, Councillor Oche, if you want to send me a note with specific questions, but I think I understand what your questions are, and we'll be happy to follow up with you tomorrow on that.
Great. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I just wanted to ask another COVID question or a comment, and I've sent this through earlier, and it probably will go to Dave. I know myself, and at least talking to my fellow councillor here in town, and I suspect all of the councillors, we're receiving a lot of requests from the community to bring motions to council with regards to being able to change the direction that's taking place during COVID and the provincial regulations. And I don't know that everybody fully understands that we as councillors don't have the ability to change provincial direction. I think our medical officer health may be able to implement stronger regulations, but we cannot change regulations that have been put to us through the province. So maybe Dave could answer that. I had sent him an email earlier and just ask for an explanation to explain to the public where that stands. We can't hear you, Dave.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Well, yes, I can.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly an important question. We want to make sure our community understands this, particularly the people who are being now hit hard again by the lockdown and the stay-at-home order. So good information to provide to the public. The vast majority of the decisions that are being made regarding these issues are really made by the province and within provincial jurisdiction. So they're passing regulations and orders, mostly under declared emergency, that the Premier has the power to declare and then kind of pass regulations or different orders underneath that. So that's how both the 28-day lockdown and then the a few days later, the stay-at-home order were passed. So because of the fact that it's all coming from provincial legislation and the powers that the Premier has, it's not really Chatham-Kent Council or other agencies within our kind of municipal family that have the power to adjust any of these. All of it does come to the province. So that's a determination of what businesses can stay open and what the rules are, including also the stay-at-home order and what the terms are going to be. As you mentioned, Councillor, Dr. Colby has some abilities in the right scenario to put specific restrictions on maybe a specific business or to increase the levels here in Chatham-Kent if we were seeing bad case counts, but he doesn't have the ability, nor does Municipal Council, to lower what the province has decided. So where this ends up being implemented at the provincial level is that the province doesn't have all the necessary staff to take phone calls from businesses or affected citizens, or also go out and do enforcement when it might be necessary. So that's why citizens will see municipal involvement in this, because it might be our public health staff or our municipal bylaw enforcement officers or police officers that have to do the implementation, who take the phone calls, who respond to questions, and then ultimately sometimes do some enforcement steps like going out to respond to complaints and lay charges if necessary. But again, that's all in the implementation of provincial laws and not something that council has decided or can decide. So I hope that answers your question and provides some helpful information to citizens that it really isn't something that can be changed at the local level.
It sure does. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, we'll do the reading of the bylaws. Councillor Solomon, Councillor Pinsino.
I'll move it, Your Worship.
All right, Councillor Harrigan, would you second that?
Yes, happy to, Mayor Kenneth.
Excellent. Third reading, Councillor Foss, Councillor B. McGregor.
Also move. I'll second that.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Resolution of council in closed session adjournment. Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, April 19th, 2021, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
And can I get Councillor Sakachi to second that?
Seconded, Mayor Kenneth.
Excellent. Anyone opposed to ending the meeting at 9:30? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.